Okay, welcome everyone to, I don't know what to call it. We're in level 3. We're in a class dedicated exclusively to the Samadhi teachings, which some of the best stuff it is, the best stuff you can get into with all of this. As beautiful as this meditation system is for me, it has a goal, and the goal isn't all the benefits you get out of this, just like Tai Chi or Qigong or yoga. Right? If you do a yoga flow, you get a lot of benefit out of that, right? If you do an hour and a half of yoga, you do an hour and a half of Tai Chi or an hour and a half of Anahat meditation, you'll get so much benefit out of it. I'm not here to sell you guys, of course, this stage on the benefits. What I want to really help us to get tonight is the goal of the path, like what it's really all about. Because you can get caught up in the modality and forget that it's leading you somewhere. The Buddha talked about how when you're working across a river and you get on your boat and you get to the other side of the river, you don't carry the boat around on your head. You don't keep walking, dragging the boat around. There's a reason for spiritual practice. And my experience is you do spiritual practice for the rest of your life, right? When you're starting your spiritual path, you have to do it as spiritual discipline. It's called sadhana, or spiritual discipline, spiritual practice. And you have to force yourself to do it right out of your 24 hours a day, where your ego wants to do everything else in the world. Meditation is about forcing you essentially in the beginning to get on the cushion, right? It's a half-hour morning, half-hour evening. So I encourage everybody as we go into tonight's teachings, which I'm excited to get into with you, level 1 of Anahat meditation, has tremendous benefits. So keep doing it. It's a bit more of a morning practice, as some of you are finding out, because the stuff goes so high that you're not very grounded at some point. And it really helps to have meditation number 1, descending, and all of level 1, which focuses a lot on the physical level. Then we have level 2, which starts to bring us a bit more into the etheric level, the energetic level, the sacred geometries and 3 dimensions. And then level 3, we start really opening up to the out-of-body experience. So we spent about 9 hours, I think, the past 3 classes talking about leaving the body. Now, I intentionally put things in that order, and I always meditate on how to conduct the class, what is the content and what is the right energy, vibe, where's the attention for that class. It was appropriate to do what in the training manual, essentially is lesson 12, all that out-of-body material. It's actually best that came first. So now we're on lesson 11, the stages of Samadhi. And those levels, the way that order goes, I put that together in 2005 or so. But after many years, 15 years of reflecting on it and then taking your group through it, it definitely makes more sense to introduce you to astral projection, which is pretty good, right? Like we talked about some really cool stuff. Now we go a lot deeper with the Samadhi teachings. I've introduced you to Samadhi, but we haven't focused on the latter stages, which are super important, because I do sincerely believe this is a very valid path to enlightenment, right? That what the Buddha experienced under the Bo tree can be found through this system. So before we just started class, I was showing you guys some pictures sitting on the top of where I live on the mountain, just meditating. And I was like, wow, yeah, we're gonna have class tonight, and just, connecting to God, just feeling the presence of spirit and opening to Samadhi. And just how blissful and beautiful this state is. It's okay. Sorry. So it's going to be hard to talk as we start moving into these stages. Yet I want to guide you into them. I want you to know how incredibly good it feels. And yeah, it's hard to know where to start, and it'll be interesting to talk. So let's not go too deep yet. Let's do a little screen share first. Give me just a sec. If you have any questions, as you know, let me know. I'm really here connected with you guys. As you know, though, we have a lot to share. So it's a bit more lecture format first, and then eventually we will certainly open to Q&A. Okay, so screen share for the website. If anybody's new to this, and I think 1 or 2 people who are here tonight are, it's fine, but realize we're getting some really deep stuff. And while we're going to review Samadhi, that means the stages of Samadhi, it means it does start pretty basic. It's anytime you're talking about the deepest possible mystical experiences, yeah, you need to start from the beginning. Okay, so here's onlinemonastery.com. Here's 2.5-hour introduction and the 6-minute intro. Thank you, Tammy, who helped to, try not to say names, but she gets credit for helping to make the 6-minute video. It's just excerpts from the 2.5-hour. If you like the 6-minute, listen to the 2.5-hour. At the very top of the screen, the top right, it says sign up. That might be covered by the camera image on the recording, but to the right where it says books, sign up. So if you're going through the system, just be sure to log your name in there. And then when it comes time for certification someday, if you decide you want to be certified in this as a certified instructor or teacher, whatever you want to call yourself at that stage, then it'll be good to know when you started and how many months or even years you practiced before you want to teach this. Just know that just because you watch all the videos, it doesn't mean you're ready to teach this stuff, right? You want to feel accomplished enough in the practice to start soliciting students, or however we'll collectively do that. Okay, so anyway, you can sign up in the top right on the Anahat page. All the lessons 1 to 12, there are technically 2 more lessons. So yeah, I'll explain that in a sec. So all the PDFs are here. We're on lesson 11 and we already did lesson 12, okay? Because I know people get confused when you do stuff like that. So hopefully I alluded to that already enough to let you know we already did 12. Now we're doing 11. You can download it for this class. It's going to be a lot of note taking if you choose to take notes, because I didn't write out all the content for tonight. And I did the training manual earlier today. There was never anything done for that lesson officially until now. So we got all the videos through level 1. Level 2 starts around here. And then we're gone through level 3, which is largely so far focusing on out-of-body travel and cosmic consciousness and ascension. Technically, lesson 14 are teachings about that, but we've already covered that. So this is going to be that discrepancy. But really, all we have to get through is the Samadhi teachings, hopefully tonight. And then, yeah, we'll have like an integration fruition kind of class where we talk about advanced sexual energy practices with Samadhi, with all these glorious stages we're talking about. And then we pretty much have concluded. So again, if anybody's new to this, really good to start from the beginning, but you're more than welcome to be here. And then we have the audio recordings. Most of those were made 2005. And that takes you through all of level 1, level 2, all the meditations for the out-of-body stuff are there, level 3. And then for Samadhi, if you go to Anahat meditation, hover over it, and then meditations on higher consciousness. There is used to be a product that is put on YouTube in this website for free. Here's an introduction to a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight, but I hope to go deeper than that 50-minute talk. Then the discernment meditation, which we'll talk about again. That's a review for you guys, but it's important for these teachings. You can go through a guided meditation of that there. Meditation 3 here called Sham Dhyan. That's space meditation, or Sham is a word for the self or spirit. It refers to the aspect of the divine that's often considered kind of blue-black, like Krishna is considered the dark one. Sham is another name for Krishna. But don't think of that necessarily with form. Sham is the space of pure consciousness, and the deepest Samadhi teachings really are aligned with that, where you're focusing on pure consciousness itself. And that requires some pretty advanced teachings, even though once you get the idea, it's relatively simple. I mean, there's not much simpler than Samadhi, actually. It's the simplest thing you could ever do. But people are so lost and so complex that we really need to strip away a lot to get you just to the very core of your being, which is so exceptionally wonderful. So I really look forward to guiding everybody into this tonight. All right, so Sham Dhyan is a really good way to start meditating on working towards what's called Asmita Samadhi, the state of pure. It's like the pure consciousness of your own soul, meditating on you as spirit. Okay, so that's there. And then we have a Monday night conscious community class I did on the topic. Meditation 2 will take you through the stages of Samadhi, but you can't really do it just with a guided recording. You really have to practice on your own. And the Samadhi stages, we're talking years of practice, right? So when do you feel ready to teach Anahat meditation? I don't know, but again, Samadhi practice is decades of your life to move through these stages. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And then cosmic consciousness is there as well. We talked about that before. Now, that's not a visualization. Cosmic consciousness is, as we've talked about, the real experience of the whole, of you outside of a body, no limitations whatsoever, and experiencing cosmos. Now, that meditation is meant to open your mind to it, to visualize it, but don't think that is just a cool visualization, right? Anybody can guide you on a 20-minute meditation flying around the universe. The cosmic consciousness, or in Sanskrit, Virat Swarup, the cosmic vision, the experience of the whole, that is a form of samadhi. But you want to understand, Samadhi isn't only that. And again, this class will be dedicated to that. All right, so that's kind of an introduction to the website. Let's stop sharing that. So again, don't teach this until you are certified. And what can I say? Start from the beginning if you haven't. And please don't distribute the material except for, of course, what's publicly there on YouTube. All right, so we're not going to do Q&A right now. Let me just jump in. And I think we're just ready to go into the training manual. And then I like to take us as deep as we can tonight. I'm not actually going to get on the cushion. I'm not prepared for that because we have a lot to cover in the workbook. Just a lot of kind of theoretical teachings to pave the way for these deeper states. Let's adjust the camera. Thank you. Bear with me. And I'll get the chat pod in there. All right, if you talk, if you ask me a question or say something, it's fine. But just know, obviously, it'll break up the flow. So we're really transcendent when we get to the deeper samadhi teachings to the meditation system. But samadhi transcends anything, right? So when you talk about something like yoga or tai chi or any spiritual practice, right, like I was saying before, the practice is super valuable. And we don't let that go. But at some point in samadhi, you do let go of the practice that got you there. But you need to know when to let go of the practice, because a beginner might want to let go early because like, oh, I don't have to do all that spiritual practice. But here's a good story that I hope to get us into this. Zen master Dogen, who lived, I forget actually. I think he's around 1200 AD, but honestly, I forget. Dogen's life was dedicated to monasticism. He was a monk, and he had one major question. He traveled from monastery to monastery, and he studied with teachers for years, but nobody could satisfactorily answer this question. And the question was, if I'm already Buddha, why do I have to practice? And take that in for a moment. If you're already the divine, if you're already God consciousness, if you already are one with the universe, why do you have to engage spiritual practice? Like you are one with the universe. How could you not be one with the universe? To give you a picture of that, I was watching the news recently, unfortunately. It was on YouTube. There's a video of a woman. She was chasing some people with a hammer, and she was like 60 years old, and she was totally off her rocker when she was threatening these people, and they called the cops. There's 100 million thousand right, of these type of things on the internet. You watch the news. The reason I'm not here to judge, but I want to just point out when someone is that lost and that caught up, that's the extreme of ego, the epitome of being lost, the fall, the separation, the detour into fear, filled with anger, filled with rage, completely identified with the body. Unfortunately, miserable, right? Like attacking someone else at that level is, but still, that person is deeply suffering. And we know these classes are happening now during COVID times, and it doesn't take much watching much of the news to realize, wow, it's a rough time on the planet, right? So I hope with these teachings, you are deeply moved to want to do something about the problem. To me, samadhi is the answer. It really is the answer to all of the world's problems. If everybody moved into samadhi, we would not have anywhere near the issues that we have now. Samadhi is oneness. Samadhi is the experience, and words are always going to fail us here, but samadhi is the experience of your oneness with all that is. The woman who I'm using as the example is completely unaware of that. And the person she's attacking is her very own self, and she has no clue. Like when they were nailing Christ to the cross, and he said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." He is looking at himself, nailing himself to the cross, and they have no idea who they're actually attacking. So go back to, I was talking about meditating on the top of a mountain and contemplating like what happened to Buddha under the Bo tree. Buddha had experienced stages of samadhi. He left his wife and child, is actually what happened. He left a kingdom or a very well-to-do life. He became a monk, and he meditated for like 7 years. The last 6, he sat under the Bo tree, and something happened in that glorious moment which helped to change the world in beautiful ways, right? You get one enlightened saint who just sits in meditation, and the ripple effects are huge. So please don't think samadhi is just about you achieving blissful states of meditation. Samadhi literally is about saving all sentient beings. So now let's go back to Master Dogen, who's asking, but if I'm already Buddha, why do I have to practice? And I'm going to encourage you to contemplate it, right? Just to give you an answer to one of the greatest mystics, if you put him in that category, greatest monks, who, spiritual teachers, right, who contemplated that for, I don't know how long, but for like a huge part of his life. He was asking that question. If I'm already Buddha, why do I have to practice? Well, here's another Zen story. The student comes to the master, says, "Master, I've attained true emptiness. I've got it. I'm totally at peace." And the master smacks him with this stick, and the student gets all angry. And the master says, "If you're totally empty, where'd all that anger come from?" It doesn't mean that an enlightened being doesn't have anger move through their system. It's an energy moving through the universe, right? It's okay. But again, there's like this deep question of who are you? The out-of-body teachings don't really give you that deepest answer. They do, like the cosmic consciousness answer is a really good answer. And the state of ascension that we talk about, where you're going into God beyond the beyond, those are very high mystical states. But that's not what Buddha experienced under the Bo tree. He had experienced that before his enlightenment, right? So what happened, kind of metaphorically speaking, is Buddha spent 6.5 years meditating, getting to the top of the mountain. And he did, right? He had those highest experiences for sure. But he realized he wasn't done yet, because when you reach the top, you must come down again. But the descent, we should look at the stages of spiritual growth. I don't have them handy. Maybe we can pull them up. If you can remember the Buddhist ox herding pictures, those stages of growth, the 8th stage, 1 to 10, stage 8, is the top of the mountain. Pure consciousness. No form, no time, no space. Buddha transcended time and space. So one answer to Dogen's question is, if you've never done that, then you still think you're a human being. And even if you get out of your body and you do astral projection, using that term intentionally, right? Astral projection, and you're in an astral body or your etheric body, you still think you're this individual, finite, separate self. Samadhi shows us you're not an individual, finite, separate self. So yes, there's an astral body, but it's not you. Yes, there's your mental body, you might say, or your mind. It's not really a body, right? But your mind. And the individual separate sense of self in your mind called ego. That's definitely not you. That's the masquerading self. Samadhi is all about who are you, and please don't think you know. No matter how long you've been on the path, tonight it would be really good to hold don't know mind. Who are you? I don't know. Who am I don't know. Just keep practicing don't know mind. A good book, if you haven't read it yet, if you're on the path, which you're obviously on the path if you're here, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Shunro Suzuki. And read it like once a year. And don't just read it once. Like, meditate on a paragraph, a chapter, the short little chapters. Meditate on like a chapter a day about I don't know who I am. All right. So when Buddha achieved the highest and then still spent 6 more months under the Bo tree before he began his ministry, right? Before he began teaching the Dharma, something else happened. And you can say that each of the stages of spiritual growth, and we're talking about right now like stages 7, if again you can reference the Buddha ox herding pictures, we're really going to spend tonight focusing a lot on stages 7, 8, 9, and even 10. All right, so the latter stages, and again I don't have those prepared to show you at the moment, but just think of the empty circle, and that's in the ox herding pictures, it's called ox forgotten, self, both ox and self forgotten, both ox and self forgotten. That essentially is Nirvikalpa Samadhi. But there are more advanced stages, which we're going to talk about tonight. And again, I hope this increases motivation. Again, meaning in past classes I've talked to you about, the only job of a good meditation teacher is to motivate you to get on the cushion. All right, so to talk about the latter stages of practice, like so stages 7, 8, 9, and even 10, yeah, to motivate you of why you want to do that. So we move through any spiritual practice, no matter how meditation will get you there, level 1, level 2, level 3. You know, you keep practicing that. And yet when we get to samadhi, eventually, like the deepest samadhi, eventually you have to let it all go. But again, why does Buddha have to meditate, right? Why does the spiritual seeker have to practice? So in between the woman attacking these people with the hammer, like that video was just like, wow, that's the epitome of lost. You know, I'm sorry, but that's a good example. And then there's, you know, Buddha. What's the difference? What's happening inside? And again, don't think you know, is if you haven't spent a lot of time with really awakened saints and sages, like that was my life. And not only did I study them in college, but I went and visited every possible living enlightened being I could find. And you can't ever nail them down. They don't necessarily look like what you would think. They don't talk like what you would think. They don't dress the way you would think. Just because, you know, you're from India and you wear the robe of a sannyasi, the ochre colored robe, and you have long hair and different skin color, you know, that might get a lot of people to listen to that person. And I'm not here to judge, but I can say the external features don't necessarily describe. Buddha was asked, how do you know an enlightened being? How would you know when someone's enlightened? And he said, you can't actually know just by looking at them. You can't even know just by hanging out with them. It's knowing them over a long period of time that you really start to assess in different situations. But I can definitely tell you, having spent time with beings who live in these higher states, they're beyond the beyond. They're beyond what you can conceive of. But study them and read about them. And, you know, I won't necessarily mention names, because like, go find the people you think are most awakened. And tonight is really about helping us to move into those states. All right, so I just had a Rumi quote in my head there. The region the saints have come from, something like that, like the place the saints have come from. And, you know, that gives us this idea that they came from somewhere else. What Samadhi shows us is time and space are meaningless ideas. And out-of-body travel is helping us to realize that. Tonight, we're definitely going to be talking about going beyond time and space. All right, that's the introduction. So as far as Anahat meditation and the proper place of Samadhi, it's complex. We have level 1, which takes us from the 1 o'clock position all the way around to the 12 o'clock position. When you're practicing Samadhi, and I'll be showing you, we'll go through the training manual so you can have the visual of this, you know, the visual words. But we've talked about this already. I just don't expect you to remember any of it. In Samadhi, the word that relates to level 1 is vitark. We're focused largely on form, not 100% with level 1, but largely we're focused on form. So level 1 is the vitark level of Samadhi, and it's Samadhi when you have complete fruition, when you're totally, and again, I'll work to define that really well tonight, when you're completely one with the meditation system. There's no past in your mind. Like in Samadhi, there's no past or future. And the beauty of Samadhi, because again, I want you to really get the essence beyond the techniques. The beauty of the essence of Samadhi is what A Course in Miracles calls the wholly satisfying nature of reality. The difference between normal waking consciousness and the highest state of samadhi called Kevalya Avastha is so radically different, but you can't see. You wouldn't know because on the surface, it's just a body. And it might look like someone else's body. It might not look as good as someone else's body. So you might think, oh, well, they look better, so they must be more enlightened. You would never know. My teacher in India, he said, the difference when you start this spiritual path, you're like a, how did he say it? It was like your ceramic pot painted blue, right? So on the outside, the pot is blue and the inside is made of ceramic. But when you go through mystical alchemy, when you go through the radical transformation that occurs through intense spiritual practice, and definitely the Samadhi teachings, the inside of the pot becomes gold, but it's still painted blue. You wouldn't know the difference. Now you might just say, oh, okay, well, the person's insides become purer or something. Like, again, you have to have don't know mind for this, because what's happening inside and what the state called Kevalya Avastha, there's absolutely no words for this experience, but you don't exist. You as a separate individual self and that don't exist. So what exists? Capital R reality. And what is that? It's pure, pure, pure peace. Like the peace that surpasses all understanding. There's no past, there's no future, there's no individual you. It's pure bliss, yet beyond even bliss, which we'll be talking about tonight. It's pure joy, but beyond happy, happy, happy. It's just so good. You wouldn't want anything else. And even though I close my eyes a lot to access these states, to talk to you about them, Kevalya Avastha is eyes open or closed. It doesn't matter anymore. There's no inside or outside. There's no ascending or descending. There's no up or down. Anahat is everything. The heart is everything. Like where does, we say Anahat is the heart chakra, right? Where does that begin? Where does that end? Where do you begin? Where do you end? Where does God begin? Where does God end? Where does the universe begin? Where do you end? Right, all that. Like all of that, those words are complete make-believe. So samadhi is a state of no mind. All right, and intuitively all we know, we try to meditate, right? We try to meditate and we say, I can't meditate because I can't stop my mind. You intuitively know there's something wrong. That all that crazy chatter is not only causing a lot of pain, but it's veiling you from reality. Right? Tracy Chapman, this is a really good idea, the beautiful singer, songwriter, she said, there's fiction in the space between you and reality. Right, one of her songs sings that very beautifully. There's fiction, I don't know if she knew the Samadhi teachings, but she's alluding to realizing your mind and emotions are huge veils to what's actually happening. All right, and how do you know what's actually happening? You have to actually stop thinking. Right, so how many times have you been in meditation where there's no mind for hours? It doesn't happen, right? So if you're already Buddha, why do you need to meditate? Because it's like we're in these veils, living in this hellish illusion, and literally, and the inside manifests the outside. So the inner hell of mind and emotions is creating hell on the planet. Like it doesn't get much worse, right? We talked about that, like as far as from here to God, like this is as dense as it gets. And there's tons of pain and suffering. And what's the best thing you can do? Samadhi. It really is the solution to all the problems. It's why Buddha dedicated his whole life to how do I relieve all suffering? Essentially, it's through Samadhi. That's what Buddha attained. Under the Bo tree, Buddha attained what's called Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Complete unexcelled awakening. That's Kevalya Avastha. It's a practice, once you're tapping into it, you keep doing it over and over and over. But more and more, these stages just become your everyday way of being. It's not like you meditate and you get it, when you're practicing, when you're starting, you meditate, you tap in, like, oh, that felt good. And then, for 10 minutes, you felt good. And then the rest of your day, you're miserable. Samadhi is an all the time thing, eventually, but there are stages and it's a practice. But again, remember the Course in Miracles quote, the holy, satisfying nature of reality. That it's not that you have Buddha nature, You are Buddha nature. It's not that you find the universe, you are the universe. There's only one self. The reason why Samadhi is the answer to all the world's problems, I can explain that through A Course in Miracles. In A Course in Miracles, there's one problem and one solution. That's all. One problem, one solution. Everything we'll talk about tonight in the training manual supports that. The one problem is ignorance, false self, the feeling of separation, the experience that I'm separate from everything and everyone. That is the one problem. What is the one solution? Samadhi, oneness. A Course in Miracles doesn't use the word samadhi, it uses the word oneness. Samadhi is oneness. How do you get there? You're actually already there. So it's a harder thing to teach because you can only talk about the techniques to get there. You can't actually describe what samadhi is. You can only describe essentially what it's not. Right? So in the deep mystical teachings, especially in Kabbalah, you don't describe what God is, right? This state of, in Buddhism, what's called shunya, or emptiness, empty of a false sense of self. What's left when there's no false self? Any idea that I put in your mind to visualize that is not that. And you'll see that when we go through the stages of samadhi. All right, so again, introduction, but also working to increase motivation. So do level 1, right? That has its place, especially in the morning. Do level 2 and do the out-of-body stuff. That has a place, especially in the evening. Samadhi, as you start to understand it more and more, isn't all the time thing. You're not practicing samadhi only on the cushion. You practice when you're driving, when you're making love, when you're eating, right? You might say mindfulness, but the way I describe the whole mindfulness movement, extremely watered down spiritual teachings, all right? Just being mindful chopping vegetables, mindful about how you drive your car, talk to your kids, that's great. But remember, there's a goal to the spiritual path, and the goal is God, right? And even though I'm referring to Buddhism, Course in Miracles, Kabbalah, all the traditions teach this. In the deep devotional teachings of, especially from Hinduism, but any religion that helps to inspire devotion, like devotional love of God. The highest path, in my experience, the easiest way to attain samadhi is when you have devotion, bhakti, that you fall in love with the beloved. So you're the lover, God is the beloved. So when I say samadhi, it's not just like intense concentration on the meditation cushion. Samadhi involves your oneness with all that is. But all that is glorious. And you are one with that. And you as the lover of that is the fastest way to get there, because that reality is love. I live alone on the top of a mountain, and during COVID, it's been like 9 months since I've barely even seen another human being. like all my relationships are largely through Zoom. And I'm one of the most fulfilled, happy, blissful people I know. And I'm not here talking about me because the false self isn't important. What I'm just saying is, how can you feel immense love and peace and bliss and joy completely alone on the top of a mountain? Why would a meditator, I'm not putting myself in any category, but I'll say I'm a meditator. Why would a meditator want to sit alone and do nothing? It's not just to avoid all the insanity down there, in the world. As I get the idea, top of a mountain away from everything, like down there, in the human world is insane, and it's painful and horrendous. But it's not about escaping that. It's actually about healing and transforming and resolving that. But again, we do that by moving into samadhi and living from that place all the time. That is so incredibly fulfilling. There's nothing in the external world that could ever move you to want to let you, and you couldn't. Once you have it, it's yours. You would never let go of the beloved. You would never let go of your experience of oneness with God. So St. John of the Cross, in his poem, Dark Night of the Soul, he talks about stages of spiritual growth. And simply stated, to jump to the finale, the grand finale, he refers to it as the perfect union in divine love. Right? Most people know about a little bit. They've heard the term Dark Night of the Soul. But he has two major stages: Dark Night of the Sense, Dark Night of the Soul, but then the perfect union in divine love. Essentially, that's what Buddha experienced under the Bo tree, but it's not just like a one-time thing. For Buddha to feel that he was ready to start teaching, to start his ministry, he had to be totally free of suffering. It couldn't just be a glimpse and then tons of suffering, right? He was dedicated to being completely free of suffering and teaching others how to do it. In the Heart Sutra of Buddhism, it says, I'm sorry, I was just thinking it'd be really nice to go full screen, but we're about to go into the training manual, so bear with me. In the Heart Sutra of Buddhism, what's the teaching? It talks about the mantra that's used. And in that scripture, there's a very clear mantra. In that sutra, there's a very clear mantra. And it says, this mantra, and there's not the only one, right? But this mantra will relieve you of all suffering and pain. That's the quote I was working to pull out of there. It will relieve you of all suffering and pain. That's either true or not true. Does it really? Does it free you of all suffering and pain? And if it does, then maybe you could do that for everybody. I just was watching today the news about India, what's happening there, and their COVID cases. I mean, you know, it's horrible all over the world, but I watched 7 minutes of all the suffering happening there. And this is where Buddha was enlightened, right? So, and my point there is that even an enlightened being hasn't stopped all global pain and suffering yet. Yet when you're in Samadhi, you are free of pain and suffering. And, you know, it's the best we can do is just get there and get more and more people there. Okay, so with that said, let's move on. So we're on lesson 11, stages of Samadhi. Again, we already did lesson 12. Again, the copyright, just please respect that, of course. And don't teach this stuff until you're ready, because it does go deeper than I think most people realize. It's not just like, you know, go to do a yoga teacher training and now you can teach yoga. Ideally, you can teach these meditations as you're experiencing them for yourself. But soon enough, we'll talk with this group about the certified teacher process. Okay, I could have pulled any glyph to help us to understand what's happening here. Yeah, this is the one I chose. Because we have 3 major energy centers in Anahat. We have the Hara, right, the second chakra region below the navel. That really represents human. It represents descending, coming down from the top of the mountain. So descending could be seen microcosmically, as if you as a soul come down into the body, that you come down and have a human experience. That's misleading, but it's a metaphor, right? Because again, we're going to the deepest teachings tonight. The idea that there's an individual you that dropped into a body is actually an illusion. Okay, but that's descending kind of represents that. You get into your body. Then we have macrocosmic descending, which is the idea that God manifested the universe, right? And that's perfectly valid to speak in those terms. But again, Samadhi shows us there's no up, down, in, out. There's no God separate from universe, right? There's only reality. There's only the oneness. There's only that which is. And that which is doesn't have differentiation. It doesn't have above or below or in or out. It's just what is. And you can't grasp that with your mind, all right? Because again, any idea you have will be dualistic. In Samadhi, you have no ideas. In Samadhi, the deepest Samadhi, there's no imagination. There's no subject-object. There's no duality. There's no two. There's no self and other in Samadhi. And again, that's why it's the solution to all the world's problems, because when you realize your oneness with everybody, you realize you are everybody. And if somebody's suffering, you're going to go be of service. You would never hurt someone else because you are someone else. There's only the one self. That's what Samadhi teaches. So that not just teaches, that is the experience of Samadhi. It's not even debatable, because when you're in it, there's only that. Like reality cannot be reality. Reality is reality, and you're part of reality, but only when your mind is clear, because those thoughts create duality or they give you the illusion of duality all the time. Okay, so anyway, descending is super important, and we can begin the Samadhi practice with meditation number 1, descending. You can experience Samadhi fully in your body, and that's important to understand. All right. Again, I'm going to say it again. You can experience samadhi fully in your body. And that's why it is better than out-of-body travel, because you can experience God right here now. You don't have to wait until you get out of your body to have a mystical experience. Every cell, every atom, like the whole universe is God. So where do you have to go anywhere? All right, now it's nice to sit in nice meditation places. You know, I have two little spots on the top of the mountain here up in the woods where I sit, and this one place on the rocks. Well, I was just touching the rock. It's like, oh, my beloved. Like, God is that. God is the trees. God is the land. God's the birds. God's everything. So why do you have to leave your body to find God? You don't. So remember, we can experience God in the descending aspect of things. Then we have the heart, right? Anahat at the center. Now contemplate that as you're practicing samadhi and you're focusing at the heart center. Like I said, where does it begin? Where does it end? Right? The heart is about love. Where is that? Right? You said there's love emanating from my heart. Where does that stop? Does it only go like 4 inches or a foot out of your body? And then outside of past that is just hell, right? Or, you know, kind of actually, right? The only hell for a child of God is to feel separate from God. The only hell for a child of God is to feel separate from God. The Islamic mystic, philosopher, Muhammad Iqbal, he said, heaven and hell are not localities, they're states of mind. Heaven and hell are not localities, they're states of mind. But the empty state of mind, the state of shunya, or now we're just talking Islam or Sufism. So that state is called fana al-fila, or just fana. Fana is complete annihilation. Fana al-fila is the complete annihilation of the individual sense of self. And you know, there's everybody in the planet, everybody who's here, no matter how evolved. There's always ego. There's always a little bit of ego. Yet the great Saint Ramakrishna, he called it, you know, you keep the little tinge of ego. There's the ego of the devotee, I love God. There's the ego of the child of God, I am God's child. So there's the lover, there's the child, and there's the servant. I'm a devotee of God, I'm a servant of God, I'm a child of God. If you're doing a human, that's like, you know, and then we like here, because we have our wings meditation, I am angel. All right, like that, like you are a child of God, you're an angelic being, you're a spiritual being here with a mission and a purpose. Like those are good ego trips to keep, because you got to have some structure for who you are in the emptiness. All right, so in the deepest nirvikalpa samadhi, there's no duality. There really is no lover beloved. There's only the beloved, and you're that. Yet Ramakrishna, when he experienced that non-duality, because you know he was encouraged to do it, and he did it within like 3 days from where he was at when he started that. When he came out of that first experience of nirvikalpa samadhi, he said, that was good, but I would much rather taste the sugar than be the sugar. To be a devotee, to be a lover of the beloved, instead of just the non-dual merging. Now, with that said, think about the heart when you're meditating. What is this love thing all about? Well, love yourself as you think who you think you are, for sure, love you as a human being. I learn to love that part of the universe, and then start loving other people beyond just your family. Can you love everybody, including all sentient beings, animals and plants and the planet, right? This is the solution to all the problems, right? And people's hearts are open to unconditional universal love. So you meditate on the heart center, but you do it with the deep samadhi teaching. So, just be aware of that. And then we have, let's go on the screen with the cursor, we have the higher circle at the head. That's where you're going to really focus a lot to practice samadhi. Even though I started from the bottom, when you practice samadhi, you want to focus on the higher chakra regions, on not just the chakras, but on the space of pure consciousness, right? Because there's going to be an experience, like if you close your eyes, let's do it for a moment. Just close your eyes. I heard my teacher's voice from India. He's Indian, I was like, close the eyes. Okay, so Guruji says, close the eyes. And I'm not claiming to be a guru, but my teacher in India, Guruji, would say, close the eyes. And then focus up above and between your two physical eyes. So yeah, let's just go on a little meditation. We got the pep talk out of the way. So take a moment to imagine, where do you perceive the past? A lot of people in English-speaking culture, we write from left to right. So the past might feel like it's to your left or maybe behind you. Let it go. Just pull yourself out of the past. And essentially just letting go of an illusion. It doesn't exist, so let it go. And let go of the future. You might imagine that to your right or in front of you. There is no future. These are just human concepts because you're thinking. So stop thinking and just sit here now. But now we do need to acknowledge in the earlier stages an outside and an inside. When you close your eyes, you shut yourself off from what seems like the outside. Withdraw your attention away from the external world. So bring all your attention into the room you're in now. But then with your eyes closed, you don't need to know about the floor, walls, ceilings. Just trust you're safe. Nothing you have to think about or worry about or fix. So just let it all go. And then become aware of your body and your clothing. But that's not really important right now. So keep moving in and up. Pull away from your ears and your nose and your tongue. Start putting your attention on the space behind your forehead. Focusing in the third eye region. Let go of the body sensations, a sense of touch. Your ears will keep hearing, but don't try to hear, just listen. And focus on the space. So we're basically just doing meditation 3, ascending. Withdraw from the world. And start just transcending the physical. Move up the chakra system. Forget about your chakras. Forget about, for now, all those geometries. Just find the space of pure conscious awareness. And meditate on that. Hold your attention on pure awareness. Pure being, not your body. Pure consciousness, not your energy body. Not your etheric body. Keep going in and up. Not your emotional or astral body. Continue the focus in and up. Not your mind. You're placing your sanyam, and I'll review that tonight, sanyam power, on the space of pure consciousness. And you'll have a sense of the known distance, right? The sphere at the head. But the sphere isn't a visualization, it's your own consciousness, your own awareness. Hold your attention on that pure awareness. Keep floating up above your mind. Notice how quiet that space is. It's pure peace. It's pure bliss. It's love, yet not dualistic. Just pure love. Pure peace, pure bliss, pure consciousness. Focus on the I am presence. Just I am. Pure potentiality. This is you, immortal and eternal. This never dies. This does not die when the body dies. There is no death. This is the one reality, and it doesn't die. This is pure life. You are life. Capital L, life. Consciousness, peace. This is pure oneness. There's no divisions. You might feel like you're a drop of that infinite ocean. And when we focus just in the drop, your own known distance of consciousness, that's asmita. Meditating on amness. But now, where do you begin and where does God begin? Where do you end and where does God begin? Where does the infinite reality that permeates the whole universe, where is it and where are you? Who is it and who are you? In Samadhi, it just is. Let's just be with that. Eyes are closed. No formal meditation right now. But the question is, with your eyes closed, are you experiencing the peace that surpasses all understanding? Is there absolutely no past for you? No future? Only now? Time and space totally meaningless? The deeper Samadhi teachings, called asampragyat, no subject, no object. No you observing in it, no you observing spirit. Asampragyat Samadhi, there's only spirit. There's only God. There's not God and something else. There's only God. Keep spending time there and realize it's always there. Whenever you're miserable, it doesn't have to be that way because God is right here now. Whenever you're not at peace, it doesn't have to be that way because infinite love is right here now. Samadhi is just to live in that. Yet make it a practice to focus on that. You can concentrate on it. Take the sanyam power and just hold your awareness on awareness. Even practice kumbhak pranayam for a moment. Just don't breathe for a moment. No breath, no mind. No separate self. No attainment, no goal. Nothing to attain. And in deep samadhi, everything else just drops away. Ideas of eyes, nose, body, mind. There's no ideas. There's no imagination. There's no make-believe. There's just the sea of pure oneness. See if you can sense what it's like to be a completely empty vessel. Nobody's home. There's no doing, there's no thinking, there's no attainment. It's just I am everywhere. There's only I am. There's only pure consciousness. Now, you can find that easier in the higher chakra regions. But let me invite you to drop that same awareness down to your heart now. Now, yeah, there's this idea of a body, right? But take the same non-dual awareness at your heart and realize your heart is the center of your awareness in the body. But there's just only God still. So after you achieve Samadhi in the highest, we can descend again back to the heart and even back to the hara. But hold the no mind state. Be fully with your body, descended. But there's no duality. So Kevalya Avastha is self alone. Only God. Yet fully here now in your body. But not in your body, just only God. All right, so with that said, very slowly, don't make it abrupt. We're going to prepare to open our eyes. But nothing changes. Don't think you come out of Samadhi. The only difference is those little flaps of skin are going to lift up. Don't think that there's an inside and an outside. So while your eyes are still closed, you can feel it feels like there's an inside, it feels like there's an outside. That's an illusion. There's only the universe. So whenever you're ready, very slowly open your eyes and realize you are the eternal, immortal spirit observing just what is. All right, so yeah, no words. Yeah, we need to use words to guide us there. So I hope, welcome to the moment. I just stumbled across last night a YouTube video of Bill Murray, and he's looking a lot older. And in his wisdom and his slowing down over the years, they were asking him something like, yeah, what are you living for? What is your goal? And he was like, I just want to be really present. I just want to fully live for a moment. I just want to experience a moment of just being alive. But people have to jump on airplanes or paraglide off mountains to get those experiences. But really, every moment you can be fully alive. All right, so this is the invitation. We're fully here now, and you'll be able to grasp the beauty of the Anahat system and these geometries when you do it from a place of pure Samadhi. All right, so let's move on to formal teachings about this stuff. Again, I designed this today with not much proofreading, so hopefully we did all right. There's a lot of Sanskrit here, and I've introduced you to most of these ideas. Most of these ideas are in our hypnotherapy schools, transpersonal training. But again, you could teach this stuff for many hours or, just years. So let's see how far we get. It's my intention to get through all of it, but I don't want us to rush. Checklist. Remember to go back to the lesson 1 and write down the date that you start each lesson and the date you feel you're proficient. In about 20 years, you might feel proficient in the deepest Samadhi teaching. So I'll be surprised if somebody writes that down after a few months. But no worries. We'll figure out the certified teaching thing. Because again, don't think like just because you intellectually might grasp this or you're feeling kind of good with some of this stuff, we need to be really humble about 10 to 20 years of intense spiritual practice to achieve the deeper Samadhi states on a regular basis. Okay, so it says, Anahat meditation is its own unique system of meditation, yet like all systems of meditation which lead to enlightenment, it follows the basic ideas as outlined in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Understanding these key concepts is crucial to master meditation and to reach its final goal. So you already know Anahat meditation now. Congratulations, if you've been through all those lessons, you do. Yet you can't really grasp it until you understand these teachings. So it's not like what I'm teaching you now is Anahat. It is, like the Anahat meditation system. You already know that. But without understanding deep Samadhi, you don't actually know where meditation goes. You're just like, I'm doing these geometrical grids. I love sacred geometry. Great. But what is the goal of that practice? You're concentrating your mind really well with meditation. Okay, wonderful. But again, what is the goal of the practice? So samadhi essentially is the goal. But you heard me say when eyes were closed, there's no attainment. There's nothing to attain. So how do you reach a goal of no attainment? But essentially that is the goal. It's really just being nobody, going nowhere, doing nothing. In Zen practice, I've alluded to this idea with you guys. It's called shikantaza, just sitting. And you'd say, oh, I can just sit. No, that's actually the state of the master, right? Which none of us really claim to be at, because how often are you just sitting? Let's take a moment to just practice that. With your eyes open, just sitting here now with me, like, just sit. But when your mind is like, well, when's he going to talk next? Or what is this all about? Just sit. And can you let all the vowels of your mind just drop away? We're just sitting here. Like, but why was that? Why would just sitting here, which seems so boring, right? Why would that be so unbelievably satisfying? Just to sit here, eyes open or closed. I mean, it's nice when they're closed because it does a physiological shift. But it doesn't change samadhi. It's just oneness. It's always just oneness. And it's so perfectly wonderful. So can you like just literally just sit here? That's shikantaza. You don't have to be on the meditation cushion to do it. It's an all the time thing. And there's no pain or suffering in that state. And it's always here now. And it's always beautiful and delicious and sweet. And it's always the beloved. And the only little bit of ego you want, again, is the ego of devotion of, I love you. Like that's there. Or the ego of the servant. How may I serve you? How may I relieve the suffering of all beings, who don't know this, who need to know this again. And then to be the child, just like, oh, mother, father, God, I love you. Like that's all that's left, just a little bit of ego. Anything else we just let go of, we don't need. Okay, so I do sincerely believe the Anahat system can bring you to these highest states, but only if you understand these highest states. If not, you know the technique, but you don't know how to use it to get into deep samadhi all the time. And there's stages of samadhi, and obviously a lot of fancy Sanskrit words. We'll just go into those, but I want you to see the page numbers. It's only essentially 6 pages, but it's tons of stuff to cover. All right, let's go into that. You should know all these terms already, but I don't expect you to, I'm meaning should mean I have covered them already, but I don't expect you to fully grasp the significance or remember all the Sanskrit. So what we're looking at now is Ashtanga Yoga, the 8 limbs of yogic practice described in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, but I've left out the first 2, Yam and Niyam. Yam and Niyam are rules, injunctions, ways to live your life that are very beneficial for meditation. Cleanliness, don't lie, don't steal, don't misuse your sexuality. One of the most powerful ones, which I didn't list here, because I want to keep this as simple as possible, is what's called Ishwara Pranidhan. Ishwar Pranidhan is the devotion to your Isht Devta, which means your chosen, if it's a choice, your chosen approach to God. And I can't tell you what that is. For you, it might be concentration. It might be meditating on a candle flame. It might be to be a Buddhist. It might be to be Jewish. It might be to be Christian and to love Christ. Like in Christianity, Christ is the Isht Devta. He is the chosen spiritual religious ideal. It's not Jesus, it's Mary or some saint, right? But you find that your affinity, your path, maybe it's just sacred geometry for you, and that's awesome, right? But whatever your path is, it becomes one-pointed. I'll tell you for me personally what it is, but it doesn't mean that's what it is for you. So in my heart, I feel like I'm a gopi. A gopi is in the Vaishnava tradition. Actually, I had a Vedic astrologer. He said, you're one of the 5 gopis. I'm like, nah, I'm not buying into that. He read my chart. I have that chart. He said, you're one of the 5 gopis. I resonate with the energy deeply, but I think anybody who is a Vaishnava, a lover of Radha Krishna, like that approach to God, is very sweet, it's very beautiful, it's sensual, it's devotional, it's sublime, and I resonate with it very deeply. So when I'm focused in my essence on God, That's my approach. And I'm very connected to Christ and Christianity, or actually Christ through A Course in Miracles. Let's be clear on that. Christ for sure, but through A Course in Miracles. Yet in A Course in Miracles, Christ is a brother. He's another child of God, like Jesus Christ, or Yeshua ben Yosef. I think Yeshua ben Yosef maybe is like the real, his real birth name, but like Yeshua, not Jesus, but Yeshua. You can connect to that energy very deeply, and that's obviously a very valid path to God. For me, though, as I'm tapping into the very essence, it's very much based on Radha Krishna. Radha is the divine feminine, divine mother, and there's like a personage to that in this approach. In the Vaishnava tradition, or the Hare Krishna tradition. Essentially, I'm kind of a Hare Krishna. And then Krishna is the masculine aspect, but he's very androgynous. When you see pictures of Krishna, he's masculine, but he's also very feminine. So Krishna is this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful being. And in the Vaishnava tradition, they consider him the supreme personality of Godhead. Now, that's helpful for a devotee of Krishna, but that doesn't mean he's supreme or better than anybody else. It's just, but the idea before we move on of Ishwar Pranidhan, which is part of the Ashtanga Yoga system, but again, I didn't write it here because it's part of the Niyam. Remember, we have Yam and Niyam, stages 1 and 2. Niyam is, well, just let's not even go too into it, but inside of the 5 things contained in Niyam, one, probably the most important in my opinion, is Ishwar Pranidhan, essentially just devotional love of God. But how do you approach that? Are you putting your attention on God as the formless absolutes? Right? If you're a shaman, it's not my path, so I love it, and I'm totally all for anybody who's into it, but like the idea of Pachamama, right? If that's like your approach to God, what is the idea though is what is the highest that you can conceive of and love? Because I'm telling you, if you go into these teachings with devotion, it'll be 100 times more powerful than if you do it through concentration. You can only concentrate on something for so long. It gets boring, right? And it takes a lot of energy. When you love something, it's so easy to focus on your lover, right? So if God becomes your beloved, the path is so much faster. And we could try to leave that out to just have pure anahat with all the geometries. But I'm telling you, the path is love. The way to God is love. And it's really hard to love when you have no idea what God is, right? So the teachings, and hopefully you'll research it, Ishwar, don't ask me to spell it, no, Ishwar, Ishwar, with the W could be kind of a V sound, Ishwar Pranidhan, Pranidhan. I won't repeat that, but Ishwar Pranidhan. So study that if you like, and think about, are you approaching God as the formless or a God with form? In the Hare Krishna movement, they call, it's going to overteach. In the Hare Krishna movement, when you focus just on the formless absolute, that's a valid path, but they call those, I believe, the Mahavadis, the great illusionists, that there's something illusory about you focusing on only God as the formless. The idea in A Course in Miracles is God created you. You're not your own creator. You have a creator. To not know who that is should be driving you nuts. If you're walking around and you don't know who created you, like, yeah, that's pretty important information, right? And you would just think, like, you want to know. But beyond that, if you find that and you're like, oh man, that guy sucks. That guy's miserable. That guy's disgusting. That guy is just pure hell. Like, I was a devotee of truth. I didn't care what God was. I just needed to know what God is. But what all the devotees find is God is so sweet and so beautiful. And it's like God becomes your only real friend. It's like, just like, that's all you care about ever is to be with the beloved. So I don't want you guys to feel like when we've gotten this far, that it's only about concentration and discipline. For me, my approach, in the midst of all these geometries and everything we're talking about and out-of-body stuff, it's devotional love, which in Sanskrit is called bhakti, B-H-A-K-T-I. But who you're a bhakti of, or bhakta, the term would be bhakta. If you're a bhakta of Christ, awesome. If it's Buddha and his path, awesome. Pachamama, or how you approach it. But let me encourage you, like, find that isht, I don't pronounce that right in Sanskrit, the isht devta, your chosen, but again, you don't really choose it, your chosen religious or spiritual ideal. And again, if you can do that, it's going to take you much further in understanding these stages. Okay, moving on. Where are we at? We're pretty good on time. Asana, body posture. So once we establish a lifestyle that is conducive to spiritual practice, we start getting in the meditation cushion, ideally every morning and evening. And if you're really serious, take time in retreat. You know, like every Friday night and all day Saturday is the Sabbath, right? And I'm born Jewish. So, but like every day can be the Sabbath. But like in Judaism, it's very specific that come sunset Friday night, there's an energetic shift and it creates a weekend, right? And you don't like do much of anything in that day. There's a reason why that's in Judaism. It makes you stop and focus on God, essentially. But you don't only have to do it for a day, you know, do it for a weekend or spend a week in meditation retreat. All right, my first Zen teacher, he got me doing retreats. We would do Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. Eventually, he had me house sit and did 9 days, like locked in the meditation room at his house. And then, yeah, just like a week at a time in intense solitude, just meditating to know God. So yeah, you can do meditation morning and evening. But again, if you are a devotee, if you are losing your mind to need to know that, you'll put more and more time into it. Ramakrishna said, the more time you devote to God, to your other responsibilities start dropping away. It's by the way, that is the secret to abundance and true wealth. Like, I don't have to do anything. I just sit on the top of this mountain, meditate all the time, and my bills get paid and everything happens. You know, I still love service, but the point is, you want to meditate on God, God will carve out that space in your life for you, and your needs will be provided for while that's happening. Again, I'm not here to talk about me, but I just know my parents were like, you always said you don't need money, you can live in a monastery, now you make all this money. I'm like, sure. That's what mysticism teaches us. Christ taught, seek ye first the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, and all its righteousness, and all things will be added on to you. I took that risk. I said, all right, I'm just going to surrender to God, put both eyes on God, and all things will be added on. Like, hopefully that's true. And it is true. And it's absolutely beautiful. So you get the inside, your insides are beautiful because you have God, and then your outsides become beautiful because your life becomes a reflection of that. This is the essence of law of attraction at the highest level you can take it. Law of attraction is not just to visualize getting a new car. Law of attraction is vibrate at the level of samadhi and watch what happens to your life. Because law of attraction, you'll only attract the most beautiful things, right? Because your insides become that. Okay, so asana. We get on the meditation cushion, honestly, as often as you can. But, you know, try to do your half-hour morning, half-hour evening minimum, because that's your sadhana, that's your spiritual practice. But you can do more than an hour a day of spiritual practice. The body postures make a big difference. We have quarter lotus, all right? So we're not going to reveal those, but just talk about each one. So we have the lotus positions: quarter lotus, half lotus, full lotus. You want to practice samadhi in those poses ideally. Of course, you can do the straight back chair, but it's not quite the same. In the deepest stages, it won't really matter. But while you're practicing, you really want to be in one of those positions. Seiza, a Japanese term for where your knees are on the ground, your shins are on the ground, you're on like a seiza bench or cushion, perfectly good. Supine, lying down on your back. We talked a lot about doing that for out-of-body travel, but there's what happens with samadhi. Like, I'm not sure where each of you are at, right, with where you feel you're at with all this, but I can tell you it's not samadhi until there's kundalini awakening. When the kundalini goes up the spine and opens all the chakras and unites at the crown, and then everything, it's like it's not just a core central channel. The Shakti that goes up this channel is everywhere. And where it's going is where it already is, everywhere. There's only God, and there's only God's light everywhere. Without Kundalini waking, you won't know what that really means. And one of the better ways to get Kundalini moving is to be sitting up when you meditate and purifying all the energy meridians, like I talked about. All those blocks that we talked about, I think last time, to the vibrations, the blocks to love that A Course in Miracles talks about, the sun scars that the yogis talk about, all those have to go. We can't have samadhi while, now, let me say, you can practice samadhi to purify your blocks. Samadhi will unravel your karma. It will unravel your sanskars. All of your blocks will start unraveling, but there are faster ways to clear your blocks besides just meditation. And specifically hypnotherapy, when done really well, like interpersonal hypnotherapy, like we teach at our school, and then breath work. So really, an interpersonal hypnotherapist would be trained in the regressive hypnosis and the breath work to clear your blocks. That's the fastest way that I know to clear blocks. But every time you meditate in samadhi, your blocks are dropping away. You're just not catering to your ego when you're in samadhi, and your false self can't last, essentially, in samadhi. So sit upright, but when we do again, samadhi becomes an every moment practice. But when you lie down, that's usually for the out-of-body stuff. The sitting upright meditation positions, that's really what you're using to practice samadhi. Okay, so I defined each one. Again, I wrote this up today. Bringing the body to stillness in a position that is conducive to samadhi. Okay, feel free to ask questions if you really feel inspired to, if you feel you need to. If not, I'll just keep moving along. Pranayama. Remember prana, here I defined, and these are kind of my transliterations and my definitions. If you research this stuff more online, you might find different transliterations of the words, and you might find slightly different definitions, but I'm giving you my deepest, current, and I believe most relevant understanding to these ideas. So prana is the life force energy, shakti, chi, the breath within the breath, but really you could say it's kundalini. But where is kundalini? At the base of your spine, moving up and down your spine? Kundalini is shakti. Where is the life force energy of the universe? Everywhere. There's nowhere that kundalini is not. The idea that it's just moving through your chakras, purifying your blocks, it has a huge duality idea in it. Samadhi, remember, is non-dual. Okay, so anyway, that energy is everywhere, and yet because humans are so illusory caught up feeling separate from all that, it seems like it's moving through you. But anyway, we have this energy that we do need to clear the blocks to and awaken, and then yam to control or regulate. You don't control the universal life force energy, so that's not the best translation, but we know in meditation we can kind of catch that energy. We can pull it down the triangle. We can pull our attention down to descend. We can put our attention in our heart. So pranayama really is capturing the life force energy with your consciousness and holding it where you want it to be. And that's leading us to the idea of sanyam, which I'll define again soon enough. Now, with the deepest pranayama, aside from all those fancy breathing exercises, which help to purify the meridians and calm the mind, that's all good. You can learn that on your own. Just like all the body postures in yoga are good. The asanas of yoga are awesome. I do it every day. And then pranayama, you can learn all those exercises, but the deepest asana, the most important asana is padmasana, sitting in lotus pose. The deepest pranayama is kumbhak pranayama, and essentially just holding the breath. Now, when the kundalini is active, the vibrational state is pretty much your state, you're vibrating at this high level of being. In meditation, let's assume not just all the time, but when you really go deep, you barely have to breathe. So it starts to happen. You essentially stop breathing, not 100% obviously, but you're barely breathing in samadhi. Because there's just so much life force energy, the body just doesn't need to do what it normally does to keep itself alive. Your body, remember meditation level 1, meditation 12, and level 2, meditation 24. We talk about making the body a superconductor for divine energy. All right? When that's happening more and more to you, in meditation, you'll breathe less and less, and you'll contain, you'll confine, you'll regulate the breath. And try right now, with no breath, no mind. And pranayama is, we hold that right here now. Your breath is here now. In the deepest pranayama, you're one with your breath right here now. So asana, essentially we're one with our body, right? Because we take the pose and there's no duality between us and the pose. You're just sitting. And then pranayama, the breath is just, it's so hard to describe, obviously, with English words, but it's just, you've captured the air, like you are one with the air, because the air is right here now, and you're totally locked in with it, right in the center. And this is the Sushumna, right in the center, just locked in with your breath. I hope everybody's getting that. I'm doing my best to describe. When pranayama comes to its fullness, you're totally in the present moment, barely breathing, and then naturally the attention is going to want to go inside, which is the next word, pratyahara. Pratyahara, sense withdrawal. We very intentionally, when we meditate on samadhi, withdraw from the external world, and we'll talk about that in other ways more tonight. We pull away from the mouth, the sense of taste, and for you guys in the beginning here, where you're really focusing on, samadhi, when it's still early, let's just say when it's a practice in the earlier stages, focus on the higher consciousness regions, all right, the higher chakra regions, but really the space of pure consciousness. While you're focusing on that, pull away from your tongue, pull away from your ears, pull away from your eyes, pull away from your nose, and pull away from the body sense of touch. You're withdrawing from your senses. Pratyahara is crucial, but it is giving you this idea of an inside and an outside, or ascending and descending, or above and below, and that's perfectly fine while you're moving into the deeper, while you're moving through stages of samadhi. All right, so you're going to start to create a duality, which is there in your reality anyway, about physical and spiritual. In Course in Miracles, it acknowledges these two levels, but only while they're still ego. God didn't create these two levels, right? God didn't create levels. There's only reality. And it doesn't have two. There's no two in reality. But now you're going to start this process of extracting your soul, which leads us to the out-of-body stuff. You're extracting your consciousness, your soul, you, from the human. So you're withdrawing from the human and pulling your attention into spirit. So it's essentially meditation 3, ascending, right up into pure consciousness. But again, you need to get the deeper understanding of what's really happening with that. Okay, so pratyahara, we're withdrawing from the world, withdrawing from the senses, taking all that sanyam power, all the concentration we've developed, we're holding it here. Again, it's not really new information to you at this stage of things, but I want you to really understand it to get where it goes. Next, dharana, concentration. Now, we have the term sanyam, which let's see, there it is. So remember, dharana, dhyan, samadhi is sanyam. Sanyam is the intense concentrated power that you've been developing during meditation. What do you do with that? Well, in chapter 3 of the Yoga Sutras, you have lots of cool powers and you can do all these amazing things. But those aren't the goal, so we don't even focus on those. We just focus on samadhi, and the goal is God. So your concentrated power is to concentrate on reality. Find reality, find the unchanging, immortal, eternal self, and concentrate on that. So dharana is the ability to put your attention on anything and hold it right there. It doesn't imply dhyan or samadhi, which I'll define in a moment again. But dharana is intense concentration, but that not with your mind. Dharana is intense concentration where your consciousness is right where you want it to be. So, you can put it on anything, me, whatever, this body or the screen, just look at the word dharana. Like I'm concentrating just on the word dharana. So just do that, stare at the word dharana. You're not concentrating your mind, you're condensing, if you will, concentrating, I'm trying to use another word, you're condensing, concentrating, focusing your awareness on one spot. But now, the black and white on your screen, the word dharna, so what, right? That's not the goal of the practice, to be able to hold your attention on one physical object. The goal of your practice is to hold your attention on God always. All right, so that's really what concentration is, the act of focusing consciousness where I want it to be without wavering. And again, that's my most current definition that I wrote today. Then, dhyan, meditation. So what's the difference, and what is this word dhyan? Dhyan is meditation, but not watered down mindfulness teachings, not any spiritual practice. Dhyan is when your consciousness is focused on something, right? Subject, object. It's when there's just, so I like what I wrote here, placing the consciousness on an object of consciousness and allowing the separation of subject and object to dissolve, right? So dharna and dhyan are not that much different, but dharna is, it's a practice. I'm going to concentrate on whatever I'm focusing on. And if you are a Hare Krishna, you might focus on a picture of Krishna. If you're Christian, you'd focus on the picture of Christ, Buddha, statue of Buddha, whatever your thing is, you concentrate on that. But when it becomes dhyan, there's just you and the picture of Christ and like hardly any mind left. But you keep practicing them, just being with Christ, just being with Christ. It's the picture, but the picture obviously is not the goal, but that's a practice, and we'll talk about that practice tonight a little bit more. Then samadhi is oneness, and you could have oneness with that picture. Right? You could have oneness with any point on the screen right now. You just focus on it, and then I'll read what I wrote here. Samadhi involves stages of oneness until only, and stages are misleading, but we have to go through stages while we're still misled, right? While you're still in illusion, we have to have stages to get out of the illusion. But once you're out of the illusion, you're like, there's no stages of samadhi, but there are while we're getting you out of the hole, right? So I like in Christianity, it says, when you took the detour into fear, when you got all caught up in your long guilt trip, when you incarnated and dig your hole into darkness, as you're digging your hole further into darkness, Christ is putting a ladder every step of the way behind you. And whenever you're ready, you turn around and there's a ladder to get out of that. And that's essentially what this stuff is. That's just metaphor, obviously, about Christ putting a ladder behind you. The stages of samadhi are like climbing that ladder back out of hell. Really, it's like, you're climbing out of pain and suffering. And you're climbing out of the feeling that you're separate from God. So samadhi will move you through those stages. But it says here, samadhi involves stages of oneness until only the absolute bliss consciousness is known as one without a second, right? One without a second is non-duality. But while there's a you climbing out of a hole, and then there's a goal, there's three things, right? There's a hole, there's you, there's a ladder, there's Jesus, there's God. All those divisions are completely metaphorical, meaningless. Right? So samadhi is perfect oneness beyond what you can describe with words. By definition, you can't use words. So we just say it's one without a second, right, in the deepest sense. But again, there's stages. So remember, dharna, dhyan, samadhi is sanyam, the intense concentrated power. Yet, because we have samadhi involved in the idea, it's not just you concentrating on something else. All right, so now with that understanding, we'll just go deeper into, well, we got a little bit to cover, but when we go just into pure ideas of what is samadhi, it does involve this idea of intense concentrated power, or sanyam, which you've been cultivating the whole time with anahat meditation. So even though the teachings transcend the meditation system, don't let go of the meditation system, right? You're still using a boat to get to the other side, even though you can possibly see the shore, right? Don't throw the boat away yet. Once you're on the other side, you still use the boat, but largely to take other people across the river, or just because the boat, which is spiritual practice, is a really healthy thing to do, right? Like, I still meditate with all these teachings because it's so good for you. But you could just go right to samadhi and, that's it. But again, that'd be like saying, I don't have to exercise, I don't have to eat healthy, I don't have to do yoga, I don't have to do tai chi, I don't have to walk in the woods, I don't have to drink a lot of fluids. Like, you don't let go of all the healthy stuff just because you're achieving samadhi stages. but realize samadhi is the highest, it is the goal, but we keep the spiritual practice and all the good lifestyle principles just because it's so healthy. So again, don't let go of levels 1 and 2 and 3 just because you're realizing the goal is samadhi. Okay, sanyam, intense concentrated power. Joriki in Japanese, at least I think that's what, that's how the terms relate from Zen practice when they say you're engaging Joriki, concentrated power. Essentially, I think it's just sanyam. But either way, you get the idea, and we're just going to use the word sanyam moving forward. The result of dharana dhyan samadhi, sanyam power. Again, that's what gives you psychic powers. If you're sitting with a client, you put your attention on them, that is your sanyam power. You can gather tons of information through the sanyam power in intuitive ways that go well beyond what your client can tell you verbally or what you can figure out intellectually. All right, so there's study chapter 3 of the Yoga Sutras if you want to know all about the powers that come about with samadhi, or I'm sorry, with sanyam, but there's no need to focus on those powers. It can be a big trap. Okay, the klesh. We're not going to talk about it too long, but the klesh in Sanskrit is that which causes suffering. And there's 5 of them, and it's just important to understand the idea that not knowing who you are is a really big deal. All right, so the first cause of all suffering is avidya. Vidya is a word for knowledge, but avidya means not knowledge, or ignorance. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of who you really are, ignorance of the true self, not knowing who we truly are. When you're in samadhi, and you're experiencing that beautiful, perfect oneness and peace and bliss, and you're just so content and fulfilled, there's nothing to do. And then you watch the woman at the gas station attacking someone with a hammer. She was just such a good example today of, oh yeah, that's still going on the planet, right? It's like mostly that's what's going on the planet, to different degrees, but that's what's going on. That person is in a complete state of avidya. It's pretty obvious when you're screaming and yelling and attacking other human beings with a hammer, you're in avidya. You have no idea who you are. And that's as insane as my right hand having a hammer and hitting my left hand. Sorry for the imagery. It is insane. It's not a judgment. In A Course in Miracles, the state of avidya, the state of not knowing who you are, is a state of insanity. It is incredible, like literally incredible, not credible. Right? And when you hear people speak from that place, not credible, because they're speaking from their ego, which is a false illusory self, which leads to the idea of number 2, asmita. So you don't know who you are, but you have this false sense of who you think you are, which is asmita. Now we have that word. Now you really focus on this word, asmita. It's actually one of the highest states of samadhi. But we have asmita klesh, and we have asmita samadhi. Asmita klesh is I don't know who I am, but I think I am something that I'm not. That's insanity. When you say, I'm going to be a human being, and you forget who you are, now avidya kicks in. You don't know who you are, and then you think you're something you're not. You actually think you're a body. You think you're a limited and finite human body. That is insane. Okay. But again, how many people walk around thinking that they're bodies? The majority of them are not awake, right? When you become Buddha, when you become realized, when you become awakened, you become enlightened, you wake up to who you really are. That's what Buddha means, the awakened one. Okay, so realize that most people, including spiritual practitioners, are asleep, right? They believe there's something that they're not. And when you get out of your body and you're in your etheric body, it's still some of this, right? It doesn't mean you're getting closer, but if you still think, oh, I'm an etheric body, I'm this limited finite being who can fly around, better, right? But still avidya asmita, you're still identified with your etheric body. And again, it's an illusion. It's not who you really are. Same with the astral body. You make it into the astral plane, you're hanging out with your astral friends, beautiful, you made it a lot further. But it's still not complete unexcelled awakening yet. You still think you're a limited astral being, right? That you're not an astral body, you're not an etheric body, you're not a physical body. So asmita is identification essentially with your body, right? If you remember Mayor Baba's transmigration picture, the dog believes it's a dog, cat believes it's a cat. It's conscious, but the consciousness thinks it's the form. If you could ask the consciousness, who are you? Right? I'm a dog, I'm a cat, I'm a dolphin. Beautiful. but not necessarily self-realized. Only human beings on this planet, according to the deep spiritual teachings, are capable of this, because only we can study these teachings and learn to meditate on the highest. Right? So awakening is a very rare opportunity out of all the whole universe. Like think of all the stars, like everything that happens, a human being can know God. Right? It's a very special, precious opportunity, which is often wasted. All right, so we don't know who we are. We think we're something we're not. When we think we're a body, we cling and hold on to all the things that we think are going to make us feel good. That's called rag klesh, clinging, attachment. And then dvesh klesh, which is fun to say. Dvesh klesh is aversion. We push away all the things that make us feel bad. That's pure suffering. Remember, klesh is a state of suffering. Now, it's really important to understand this, to understand samadhi, because while you're an individual self clinging to things, you are holding on to what's valueless. God is what's valuable. Samadhi is what's valuable. Oneness is what's valuable. God's peace and bliss and joy and love and wisdom and guidance, right? That's valuable. Everything else that you're clinging and holding on to, that's going to go away, right? Because everything else is changing. But people cling to changing finite realities and they suffer. We all kind of get that, but it's important to understand that to achieve samadhi, because you have to let it go. And that's what the dark night of the senses and the dark night of the soul. That's all about your struggle with rag klesh. When you're going through a dark night of the soul, you're like, oh my God, everything's falling apart. I'm losing this. Everything's being taken away. Yeah, for your ego, that's really painful. But for your spirit, you're like, oh, thank God. Right? So Rumi, Kabir, the great poets, they say, tear your house down now. Like, it's going to go away it doesn't mean physically, burn your house down. It means like, tear your ego down now. Start letting go of stuff that's not valuable. And that's what's happening during spiritual practice. You're learning what's valuable and not valuable. But when you're in the state of avidya or illusion, you think that stuff that's valuable is all this external stuff, and not just external. Your individual sense of who you think you are. That's why I was saying, like, don't know who you are. Don't think you know who you are, because you have to let that go too. You're like, I'm a husband, let that go. I'm a wife, let that go. I'm a son, let that go. I'm a daughter. Like, let it all go. Because what you're letting go of is not just physical stuff. You're letting go of your identity. You're letting go of your individual sense of self. All right, so rag klesh is actually really deep teaching about holding on to a false self and all of its illusory stuff, right? The thing that's most valuable is the treasure inside of you, and in deep samadhi, that treasure is everywhere, right? So like that's the goal, that's the prize, if you will, but it's who you are, it's how you were already created, it is reality. Dvesh klesh, pushing stuff away, pushing people away, but also, things, but also pushing emotions away. When you suppress emotion, that's dvesh klesh. Suppressing emotion, not letting yourself feel your emotions, aversion to emotion, creates huge divisions inside of you. A teacher of mine, he said, when you suppress, you not only have the blocks in your heart, which is a false self that's buried away, like your inner child who's all disturbed is buried in your heart, and then you've got a layer on top of that, because it takes force to keep that self down. And then there's you up here. But really, you got these two layers. So this teacher, he said, now you're a double layer dude. You're a double layer dude. You've got all the crap you buried in your heart, and you've got a layer, like if you have 40% of your life force buried in your heart as your unresolved emotions and inner child, all your pain from your childhood and past lives, if there's 40% of energy in there, it takes 40% of energy to hold it down. Then you're left with like 20% to function, or less, really. Most people, I think, honestly, it's probably like we use 10% of our brain, which isn't totally true. Even in science, it's not a true statement. You do use all your brain. But anyway, the idea that you may be functioning at 10% of your capacity is probably true. Like 45% is buried in your subconscious, unresolved stuff, and it takes another 45% to hold that down. So aversion, very destructive. Stop suppressing. Learn to pull your consciousness back into the self and be the observer, be the witness, be the observer of your body, mind, and emotions, right? That idea that you are the consciousness, you're the observer, the knower, the witness, that's the key, right? Focusing on the knower, focusing on pure consciousness, right? And then stop using your willpower, because that's your willpower comes from your soul. When you suppress emotion, that's the power of will. When we do pratyahar, sense withdrawal, we withdraw the will back into the self. We pull back into the pure consciousness, into the knower. And then you're letting everything else go. Avinyavesh has two levels of understanding, Avinyavesh Klesh. Fear of death, right? When you think you're a body, you're afraid you could die because you're growing up as a kid, then grandma died, you say, what happened to grandma? Oh, she's dead. She doesn't exist anymore. And they're like, well, she's a body and she doesn't exist anymore. I'm a body. I'm not going to exist anymore. It's pretty simple logic. And they teach you that, that's what we see growing up. And then maybe there's this idea that you have a soul that continues on. Samadhi is actually deeper than I have a soul that continues on after death. So, I won't go too into that, but really, essentially, Samadhi is you're infinite and eternal. There's no such thing as death. It's not that you survive after death. There is no death. Right? It's what Christ taught in Christianity. It's what Christ taught in A Course in Miracles. Death, there's no death. There's only life with a capital L. But Avinyavesh is because you think you're this finite, limited, changing form. Now you're afraid you're going to die. But deeper than that is Avinyavesh Klesh in the sense of fear of egoic death. In Sanskrit, ego is called ahankar. And ahankar is really terrified of not existing. Study Course in Miracles, the ego has all these crazy ways to try to continue its own illusory existence, right? So when Buddha was enlightened and he said, why do we suffer? How do we eliminate that? He said, you suffer because of your false sense of self, right? And essentially that's exactly what the Yoga Sutras or A Course in Miracles are teaching, is this sense of ego is really scared of not existing. Those of you who are hypnotherapists who do parts therapy, whenever we bring in a part of the psyche, which is ego, by the way, and you say, okay, part, what is your name? What is your job? And then if you said, well, if the client was silly enough to say to that part, go away, I don't want you here, that part is terrified to not exist. No part of your psyche wants to not exist. So why are you terrified of not existing? Because you're an eternal, immortal being. And the idea that you don't exist for eternity is crazy and terrifying to you. It's not just like you're scared of death. No, like you are eternal and something feels so wrong about the idea that you don't exist forever. You do exist forever, and you and your relationships exist forever. They'll change forms. You won't always have the same relationship with your child. Maybe they'll be your parent in the next lifetime, whatever. But you are eternal beings forever. So there is no death. And we have to be willing to let go of our false sense of self or the ego in this process. So you're not just letting go of the physical stuff. What stays, stays. What goes, goes. You're not just letting go of people. Those who stay, stay. Those who go, go. You're letting everything go. And we'll get to that in a moment. Right? But that's really crucial to understand Samadhi, is you have to be willing to let everything go and just hold the Samadhi state. It takes tremendous trust and faith that if you just let it all go, God will make it better. Like, just give it to the universe, surrender it. These teachings are all about surrender, and everything is made better off. Now, it's not going to look the way you thought it would look, but it's always made better off. Okay, we talked about this, and this is just a quick chart that I threw together today. Vivekyati, discernment or discriminating wisdom, but probably more politically correct to use the word discern. To discern the real from the unreal or truth from illusion. Again, you have that meditation on our website, Vivekyati, Discerning Wisdom, in the Meditations on Higher Consciousness. And I'm only going to review it intellectually here to move us along. We won't go through that meditation right now. So remember, we have above the line and below the line. There's not really 3 columns. That's just for the formatting, of on the screen. It's just that there's now, while we're still talking within the realm of people who are in illusion, we have above and below the line. We have unreal and real, truth and illusion, spirit and basically ego's nightmare, the pure spirit and its creations, and all the ego's make-believe. And that's the distinction. Spirit creates, ego makes shit up. Right? So we want to get essentially above the line. And we need to know what's above the line and why we want to go there. So above the line, meaning what we encounter in deep meditation, absolute, but not because of some cool brain chemistry thing. The brain will respond to this stuff, but remember, above the line is above the body. It's above the emotions. It's above your conscious waking mind. Right? You can go there, but not your body can't go there. Your emotions don't go there, nor does your mind go there. Okay, so the movement up into that happens through this withdrawal inside, as we really essentially talking about ascending now, ascending meditation and anahat. So we're putting our attention, right? Putting your attention, meditating upon pure consciousness, absolute. It's always there. It's eternal. It'll never not be there. It's unchanging. It's the subject of the subject-object relationship, right? So it's I observe it, or I observe thou. Martin Buber, the Hasidic philosopher, made that nice distinction for us. I-it relationships. I observe the microphone. I observe the computer monitor. I am the observer, and I'm observing things. Let all the things go. What stays will stay, what goes, goes. Don't worry about it. And then there's I, thou. I, thou is really what it's all about here, where I am putting my attention on thou, God. There is a subject-object relationship in some of the Samadhi teachings we'll get into, where you are observing God. But eventually that drops away as well. That's a slight duality, but that's one of the deepest, that's like the last duality to go, where you're observing God. Okay, so subject, object, I, it, or I, thou. Real, right? So we got that. Truth, peace, bliss, love. You know, when you watch a lot of the insanity in politics now, no names mentioned, lies, 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 right? If your mouth is moving, how do you know if a politician is lying? Because their mouth is moving, right? That whole idea. Why? Because they're totally not aligned with that. You know, anybody who's lying is not aligned with truth. Capital T or lowercase t. Yogis are, the reason why a saint is so powerful, by the way, is because they are aligned with truth, and that consciousness knows that all the energy of the universe is in the service of it. Remember, Prakriti, the energy of the universe, is in service of Purush. And you are Purush. The saint knows him herself to be Purush. And you're so powerful because your words are always aligned with truth. You couldn't be otherwise. There's no misalignment in Samadhi, right? So truth is, and again, just not to go too political on us, if we had enlightened people, like Marianne Williamson, the beautiful Course in Miracles teacher, she was getting pretty close. I'm like, I would vote for her in a heartbeat. Somebody who's more aware of these truths, oh my God, right? So, you know, we all know we're gonna have huge global change when we get more enlightened people, you know, in positions of leadership. So anyway, imagine somebody who lives from peace, love, and bliss. And then on the other column, joy, oneness, non-dual, absolute bliss consciousness, pure, free, and forever. That's what's valuable. Everything below the line, not valuable. Put your attention on what's valuable. That's the practice of Samadhi. Now, why would you put your attention on it? Like I said when we started, because you love it. If you love it, you become a devotee of it, you'll go 1,000 times faster. If you're doing it through concentration alone or contemplation alone, that's fine. There's all different paths. But, you know, the yogis tend to say the highest, fastest path is devotion. Okay, so then below the line, right, it's relative, changing, temporary, finite. They're the objects of our consciousness, not our consciousness itself. Remember, your body, mind, and emotions are below the line. You're not a body, you're not your emotions, and you're not that crazy thinker in your head. Sure seems like it. Remember, even though it's a very persistent illusion, it's still an illusion. The object of consciousness, time and space, what's unreal or illusory, pain and pleasure is below the line. In Sanskrit, it's called sukh and dukh, pain, pleasure, right? You cling to sukh, that which makes you feel better, and you push away aversion, dvesh, klesh, that which feels bad. So there is pain and pleasure below the line. And a yogi, sure, could have pain and pleasure in their body, and they could even have emotions move through. Some emotions are pleasant, some are not. But you're transcendent to all of that in the deeper teachings. All right, below the line, or just because of your mind, essentially, it seems dualistic. Happy and sadness, again, kind of sukh and dukh. Ego, right, essentially is below the line, but it's kind of what makes the line, really. And then suffering and separation. Okay, Just to be clear, you recommend starting with level 2 at nighttime. Yeah, it's really, I want you to listen to your own inner guidance because there are no absolute rules. But my recommendation is level 1 in the morning because that gets you more connected to your body. Level 2 at night because that gets you more connected with the subtle energetic bodies. And then you're going to practice out of body stuff essentially at night. And then when you wake up back up in the morning, it'll get you back in your body. One of our classmates, you might scroll up in the chat pod. So thank you for encouraging me to do descending meditation in the morning because now I can, function, right? Now I can get back into my body and be grounded. So yeah, now when you do Samadhi, it's actually all the time. Once you understand what's going on, you're always practicing Samadhi. But I'll show you once we get through this lecture how Anahat meditation fits into all this. Okay, so this all come together, and this is review. But again, you can't hear this stuff enough. You go like living in India, we just go hear some teacher one way or another, where's the guru or some of the masters who are there. I call them masters because you do that stuff for 30 years. You're a master. Yeah, I'll just go for hours and just talk about this stuff. So even though you're like, I know that word, just hearing the words and putting your attention on the ideas is a meditation in and of itself. Okay, Vairagya. Vairagya is a Sanskrit word for letting go, essentially is how I define it. It says here, letting go of that which is changing and observable, while keeping one's attention rooted in the self. Okay, so while you're meditating, if you're like, I'm worried what's going to happen outside of my house about something over there. Like, I live in the California mountains. To my east is the El Dorado fire, and to my west is the Bobcat fire. Yay. While I'm meditating in between two huge wildfires, Vairagya, like, what do I do about that? Well, let it go. As long as I know I'm physically safe and there's nobody I need to go help right now, then let it go. Right? And so what are you letting go of? Everything that moves, everything that vibrates, including your body. So you're sitting in meditation and the body has a stomach ache or whatever, like that's possible. All right, let it go, focus on the self. But that's why we want to keep the body super healthy and comfortable and flexible and strong and energetic, because you don't want to have to focus on the body in meditation. If your body is capturing your attention because of discomfort or pain or whatever, it gets in the way. But you can only let go so much. Eventually you got to, uncross your legs or get up and walk or take care of a health concern. But ideally, you don't want your body calling your attention. But either way, so you say, and then there's things about the body, like, overweight or, issues that happen with the body, right? Things we might not always like. Let it go. But what are you letting go of? Not the fact that maybe you're gaining weight. You can try to let go of those pounds. That's perfectly healthy and fine. But you're letting go of the part of you who cares. Again, it doesn't mean you're not going to take care of your body, but let go of the neurotic self who cares that, oh God, I'm getting a little fat. Like, let it go, or whatever other thing you're concerned about of your body. So what are you letting go of? Not actually, like, I don't know what else people not like about their bodies. Like, you don't like your feet are too big, whatever. So what do you let go of? Do you cut off your feet? Vairagya doesn't mean you cut off your feet. Vairagya means you let go of the part of you who cares that your feet are a little bit bigger than anybody else's, whatever. Whatever people do in their minds about insecurities about the body, let go of the ego who cares about that. So Vairagya is letting go of everything that moves, which includes your body, your emotions. Never hold an emotion, never suppress an emotion. If it moves, let it go. If it vibrates, let it go. Everything below the line, let it go, which includes your preferences, your opinions, your hopes, your dreams, your likes, your dislikes, all that stuff you do in your mind that you hold on to that creates the sense of self. In Samadhi, you have to let it all go. Like, yeah, but I really like backgammon. I don't know why that popped in my head. Maybe it's one of you. Like, I really like backgammon. You can still play backgammon, but let go of the you who likes it so much. Like, who made an identity about it, where you say, I'm like the backgammon champion of the world, and I'm proud of that. You don't have to stop playing backgammon, but let go of the ego and let go of the pride. Like, that's Vairagya, constantly letting go, because you can't be in Samadhi while you're still entertaining a false self. Right? So I'm so proud of my children. I'm a great mother, and I got them through college, and I'm a great mother. And you're not letting go of your kids. Nobody said renounce your kids, but let go of your ego that you're such a great mother. Right? Like, I'm sure you're a great mom, but let go of the ego that needs that affirmation, because that's a false self. Right? Like, Yeah, I hope that's clear. Okay, so we're letting go of everything that moves, but people tend to think Vairagya is about getting rid of your stuff. Renunciation in spirituality, you only tend to renounce things you're not okay with. Like, you're not comfortable with your sexuality. I've renounced sex. I'm a celibate monk. Well, you chose that because you're not good with sex. You're not comfortable with your sexuality. Or I've renounced driving. Or I've renounced money. Well, you probably just weren't comfortable with money. Money's an illusion. Have as much of it as you want, right? Why are you renouncing it? You give it more power when you renounce it. If you're pushing something away, aversion to money, aversion to public speaking, like whatever you're pushing away, that's not Vairagya. That's dvesh, klesh, right? Aversion, pushing things away. So most spiritual people renounce stuff they're not okay with anyway. Vairagya says you have to let go of the you who cares. If God asks you to public speak, you public speak. God asks you to make money, you make money. You're always giving it back anyway for the mission, but you're not holding on to anything. Okay? So again, Vairagya is very subtle teaching. Then neti, not this, not that. Again, we won't go do the meditation tonight, but that's the one that's in the Vivek meditations on higher consciousness, discernment meditation, where you're essentially going to say, but I hope you do with me right now, I'm not the room. I'm not that wall. I'm not that wall. So neti. I'm not the wall on my left. I'm not the wall on my right. I'm not the water bottle on my left. I'm not the microphone on my right. Neti. I'm not my left hand. I'm not my right hand. Neti. I'm not my left eyeball. I'm not my right eyeball. Neti. I'm not my nose or my ears. Neti. I'm not my hair. I'm not my scalp. Neti. So you're not the body, right? I'm not my body. Neti. I'm not this body. I'm not my past life bodies. Right? Neti. I'm not the sensations in my body. And pull back. I'm not the emotions. I'm not the mind. I'm not the imagery. I'm not the preferences. I'm not the ideas. I'm not the goals and the hopes. That can all be there, but pull back, right? And again, let go of everything else that moves and affirm I'm not anything that I'm observing. You can't go to Samadhi while you still think you're something that you're not, right? So we let it go and we discern what we are from what we're not. So like look at your hand and be the observer of your hand. I'm not my hand, right? Letting it go doesn't mean cutting it off, but let go of thinking it should be bigger or smaller. It should be whatever. You want to make your hand different. It's like, it is what it is. You're the observer of it. And Vairagya is let it go. Neti is to say, I'm not this finger, I'm not that finger. I'm not this thumb, I'm not that finger. I'm not this piggy, I'm not this little piggy. I'm not my hand. I'm not what I observe. But keep doing that all the way back into pure consciousness. I'm not the emotions. I'm not the mind. I'm not my intellect. I'm not my memories. I'm not my inner child. I'm not my inner parent. I'm not my inner adult. I am pure consciousness. All right, and then eventually you'll stop saying I'm pure consciousness because you're it. All right, then that leads to chit. Chit, we're running out of time. No. C-H-I-T, chit. Chit is the Sanskrit for pure consciousness as opposed to C-H-I-T-T, which is what the Sanskrit is below. Or I gave you the chitta. When you read what's below in Sanskrit, yogas chit vritti nirodha, it's all one word. See how the Sanskrit, there's a line, and it connects all the consonants, and then a lot of those curvies that you see there are, and the curves under are the vowels. But the lines are connecting, and it's all one word, yogas chitta vritti nirodha. That's 4 words, but it's essentially one very, 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 very deep idea, which we'll spend a little bit of time on. So when we're talking about chit with Wenti, we're talking about pure consciousness, pure spirit, Purush, right? The absolute, unchanging, that which is above the line. Or you could just call that God if you want to. The underlying ground of all being, the one absolute bliss consciousness, the self with a capital S, pure, free, and forever, one without a second. That's the goal. That's what we're putting our attention on. And we'll all have our slightly different approaches of how we get there. I love to bring my attention there through my devotion to Radha Krishna. Feel like I'm a gopi, I'm a lover of God. And like that's a beautiful way that I like to approach that. It just feels really natural and right for me, but it might not for you. But either way, you're putting your attention on pure consciousness and just focusing on the highest. You're always focusing on the highest. Now, chit or chitta with two T's. Chitta are waves or fluctuations of consciousness or mind. So imagine the pure ocean of consciousness, God, and then God said, let there be light. That's called parinam, or change. Now there's waves of consciousness. So watch your mind for a moment. And to make it easy, just in your mind, start counting. Just say 1, 2, 3, 4 in your mind. You can hear those thoughts in your head, right? Those are chit vrittis. Those are waves of consciousness. And you know when you meditate, somehow they're the problem. So somehow all the chit vrittis are the problem. All these waves of consciousness. Now, remember, mind is an extension of spirit. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, it's created by God. Right? Mind is the activating agent of spirit. Mind is the activating agent of spirit. So when God said, let there be light, that's divine mind. When you, in your head, say, let there be light, let there be thoughts, let there be ideas, you're doing that. You're stirring up your mind. Right? You're taking the pure consciousness and you're stirring it up and you're creating waves. When the waves get so murky and this swirly thing called ego develops and you say, oh, here I am, that's the false self. You know, here I am. And that's okay, just to say I am. All right, that's asmita, I am. But then, I am bad, I'm stupid, I'm worthless, I'm unlovable, I'm dirty, I'm disgusting, I'm shameful, I hate everybody else, I'm scared of everybody else. And then you're spinning yourself a web of lifetimes. All right, that's the detour into fear. That's the long guilt trip. That's the apparent separation from God. So where's the separation from God happening? In your chit vrittis. In the ego that develops, remember, ego is a hankar, this individual false sense of self that develops in the field of mind. And mind is fine. Mind is just waves of consciousness. And it's a creative force. There's nothing wrong with mind. The problem is the ego mind or the false self. So now to understand how to get free from all this craziness, we need to understand the second sutra of the Yoga Sutras, which is Yogas Chit Vritti Nirodha. The first sutra is Atta Yoga Nusasanam, which essentially just says, now we're beginning an exposition on yoga, the state of oneness, where we move into Samadhi, right? We're just expounding upon the state of yoga and the teachings on how to get into the state of oneness, Samadhi. Yogas Chit Vritti Nirodha, I wrote below. This is my translation. It's been translated in many different ways, but it's important how you translate it because mistranslations have led to really poor meditation practice, and there's not a whole lot of good translations of the Yoga Sutras. Most of them give you words that are misleading because there's no good English words. So let's spend a little time with it. The state of oneness, that's yoga, occurs when the waves of the mind, chit vrittis, are brought to stillness. Now, the word narod is the key word. Right? Yoga, all right, we can get that. Samadhi, oneness. Chit vrittis, your mind, getting in the way of that experience. So no mind, right? Getting the mind clear. So then how do we get the mind clear? The term narod is the answer, but that's often translated as suppression. So often the translation of this very important sutra is the state of yoga occurs when the mind is suppressed. We've been spending a lot of time talking about stop suppressing your emotions, stop suppressing your mind. You can't suppress it. When you have a mind and you try to stop it, which is impossible, right? In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna said to Krishna, that's like trying to capture the wind. I can't stop my mind. Right? And Krishna's like, you're right. You can't do it that way. That's not how you do it. So people misunderstand meditation all the time because they say, I can't meditate because I can't stop my mind. And then you get a lot of translations of this one sutra in the West that says yoga is the restriction or the suppression of the fluctuations of consciousness. The word narod is often translated as restriction or suppression. And I studied this stuff in college. This was my major. You know, thank God I had the luxury to do that. And essentially, I studied the sutras that said, suppress your thoughts. But I had good enough teachers in the West that helped me to understand it's not quite that. But it was only when I went to India and really started studying the Yoga Sutras, in the Himalayas with like great teachers. And then I started understanding, what does Narod really mean? Okay, so the way I'm translating it here, based on the deepest teachings I've been able to gather, you could say when the mind is brought to stillness, because when you're in the state of Narod, there will be no thoughts. And that's very nice. And when they're really not there with no effort, that's really nice. Like you don't even have to try to stop them. It's just pure silence. And that's really beautiful. So Narod would be the cessation of thought. But to understand it, let's see what I put here next. Yeah, let's go to these teachings. Bhutan Vritti and Narod Vritti. To understand how to get your mind into the state of Samadhi, you have to stop doing what's called Bhutan Vritti, and you start practicing Narod Vritti. Bhutan Vritti is externally oriented attention, where your consciousness is going out into the world. And here I said attention focused on external objects of consciousness as moving out through the five senses. Essentially, it's what you're doing now. Right? If you're still with me and I've got to pay attention this long in a class like this, then you're focusing through your eyes and your ears, right, to engage the material. That's fine. That's Bhutan. Narod is the opposite of that. But everybody's doing Bhutan, right? They wake up and they put their attention on their body and their senses. And first of all, their mind kicks in, right, with all the worries and concerns and fears. So what are we going to do? And the alarm goes off and they just run, and they're 100% Bhutan Vritti, totally caught up in the world, caught up in the false self, caught up in their sense of body, right? Caught up in avidya, not knowing who they are, asmita klesh, believing there's something they're not and suffering because of it, and then rag klesh, holding on to things they don't want, dvesh klesh, pushing away things they don't want, fighting with the world, trying to make the world a better place by fighting with it, right? Or thank God for protesters. I'm not criticizing them. They should be out there doing what they do. But yogis really don't do that. Yogis understand that if you just pull back into samadhi, the universe will balance itself out. If enough of us moved into samadhi, we would have a 100th monkey phenomena where the whole planet would change. Everything would change. But again, if you feel inspired to go out and protest, go for it. That's maybe your dharma. Spend time in samadhi so you could find peace in the midst of getting out there. But anyway, that's another topic. I don't want to get political or anything. So when we're out there, Bhutan Vritti, we're totally caught up in the world. And we're fueling our ego, because remember, consciousness, mind, and then ego, and then the whole story, right? Your whole life. We don't want to keep creating more stories, more drama, more karma. So, but when you're in Bhutan Vritti, you're doing that, and you're fueling the lower false sense of self. I hope everybody knows what that's like. Narod Vritti is where we turn the attention inwards back into spirit. All right, and now what happens to the mind? So essentially, that's meditation 3, ascending. When we ascend, we start withdrawing from the world, right? We're forgetting about the room, we're forgetting about our body, we're letting go of our emotions. To get this state of Narod where the mind stops talking, you go above it. To get your mind to shut up, you climb out of it. It's like drowning in a pool of water, pond, and there's dirt on the bottom, and the dirt's all stirred up, and the waves are all stirred up. Bhutan Vritti is when you're staying in the pond, and you keep splashing, and you're making more waves and more mud, and then you try to hold it together. When you meditate, you say, I'm going to stop my thoughts. I'm going to stop my emotions. That's like trying to stop all those waves while you're in the pond, stirring it up. Narod is to just get out of the pond. That's it. You just ascend. You transcend. You go to the seat of the witness, the observer, the knower. You move into deep samadhi. And again, there's stages of samadhi, but you go into what you can conceive of. And then the lower self just settles down on its own. Right? Again, it's the secret to wealth and ease and success and health and global healing. Just get out of the pond. Right? And then the dust settles, your body will settle and relax, your blood pressure will normalize, all that good stuff. And then while you're transcending your emotions, the heart will balance itself out. And then you get out of your mind, and your mind will balance itself. The human will just, it's like goes into a state of idle. It's just My body's still alive. I don't have to do anything with it. The body's just a communication device. It's not your God. It's not the thing you worship. It's not the goal of your life to make it perfect. We don't even know what the body's for. For spirit, it's only a communication device. It has no other purpose. And it's only a communication device when we need to communicate to wake people up. If not, you really don't need a body. Right? So you can go into Samadhi, feel the immense bliss of who you are, and wonder why your body's doing all the other stuff. Because all they're doing is trying to find Samadhi, but they're looking for love in all the wrong places. Okay, so Narod is inward-oriented attention, attention withdrawn or withdraws is probably what I should have written there. Attention withdraws or withdrawn is found in the space of pure consciousness where thoughts naturally settle down their own. Okay, so instead of this outward motion or outward that way, there's this inward motion back into spirit. That is the sutra we see on the screen in the Sanskrit there, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. And then the next sutra, I forget the Sanskrit right now, but he says then the self is established within the self. That's the goal. And that'll move you into the stages of Samadhi. So let's review those. All right, this is a review, but we haven't talked about the latter stages. And now that you've been through meditate levels 1 and 2 and 3, we can talk about the proper place of all these. So let's just review the stages of Samadhi. And we'll see where we go from there. So the word sa, and I purposely put space here. You can print this out. You can take notes. So a lot of Sanskrit, but I had to do my due diligence to learn it as well. There are just no good English word for this. So the Sanskrit is a really good map of the terrain, and it's worth studying. Okay, so stages of Samadhi, stages of the experience of absolute oneness with God or absolute bliss consciousness. Sampragyat. Sampragyat means subject-object, implying duality. And all these stages, Vitark, Vichar, Anand, Asmita, I was trying to think of how I could have formatted this better on the screen, but I hope you can see. Sampragyat is Vitark, Vichar, Anand, Asmita. And then Vitark has a Savitark and Nirvitark stage, and Vichar has a Savichar and Nirvichar stage. And then you move into Anand, which really doesn't have a Savichar or Nirvichar, with the Sa or the Nir. Then there's Asmita, again, doesn't really have a Sa or a Nir. And then you have the two deeper stages of Asampragyat Samadhi, and there's other words in the Asampragyat category, but I'm keeping it simple. And it's really all I think you need to know. Nirvikalp and Kevalya Avastha. Right, so I want to explain the Anand and Asmita stages primarily, because I hope you already understand, whether you do or not, you do. You're already doing Vitark and Vichar because of Anahat. I need you to understand Anand and Asmita, or you're not necessarily moving in the right direction as quickly as you could. Eventually you'll get there, but without understanding Anand and Asmita, you're lingering in lower levels. Okay? And then, of course, you want to get into the Asampragyat stages, which are the most beautiful. All right, so Sampragyat, subject-object, meaning there's an I and an it. Even with Asmita, there's some sense of I and thou, but we'll get to that. So Vitark. Vitark, let's follow it on the screen. All right, so Sampragyat, dualistic, the earlier stages of Samadhi, where there's still a sense of subject-object, duality, me and thee, or I and thou, I and it. Predominantly I and it, when we're talking about me looking at things. And then Asampragyat, dualistic, no subject and object, only pure consciousness is one without a second. And as interesting as that is, there's still some stages in that. And I'm just giving you 2 words for that. Vitark, form. When we're focusing on form, when we meditate, that's usually with our eyes open. In the beginning, we're definitely able to have our eyes open and concentrate on something, right? So the picture of Christ, picture of Buddha, picture of Krishna, that kind of stuff. Or in Islam, because you don't have pictures of God or Muhammad, you would look at some beautiful calligraphy or geometries, usually what they do for their art to not try to personify the divine, right? They don't want you to have some idea in your mind of what God is, because that's not what God is, just like Judaism. Okay, but Christianity, they got a get out of jail free card. They found a loophole by, their theology allows you to focus on Jesus, but Judaism, which is where that came from, right? Christianity grew out of Judaism. In Judaism, you don't really meditate on an image of God, but in Hinduism, you sure do, and they love it. They have all their gods and goddesses. So while you're focusing in some form, and usually it's, human constructed form, of course, but you could, not even human constructed, you can meditate on a beautiful stone or a crystal or a sunset, anything you focus on that, let's just say physical. So vitark is like a physical form. You meditate on that form and you could achieve oneness with that form. Don't stare directly into the sun, or let's talk about the moon, right? You could stare right at the moon, and when there's just you and the moon and nothing else going on, no past, no future, no mind, just you and the moon, which is pure subject-object, then that's vitark. But now, how do we start? So anahat level 1, we're focusing on our body, our breath, not even the chakras so much, right? But just the hara, the placement of the navel, the physical heart region. There's more in level 1 than just the physical, but it's largely focused on the physical, right? So that's the vitark level when we're doing anahat level 1. I'm going to say it again because it's so important if you understand where everything in the anahat system fits in. Anahat level 1 is largely vitark. Tremendous benefit when you're doing body postures in yoga, right? You're taking care of your physical body in that way. Vitark, when you're doing Tai Chi, you're moving your body and all those beautiful movements. That's vitark. You're very much focused on the physical level of things. Now, there's two levels of vitark, savitark and nirvitark. Savitark is observing the form, but using thought to do so. Nirvitark, observing form without thought. All right, so why do you want to understand this? Because if you're teaching meditation, you need to be able to teach a real beginner. Like, you can teach meditation without teaching anahat, right? The anahat meditation system, obviously I want you certified and all this because it's a pretty elaborate system. But if you just teach a beginner how to meditate, you could say, all right, here is, let's pick something worth showing, and just a pen. So here's a not too fancy pen. I can just focus on that. But now, how do I do savitark? I can say, in my mind, right, this is how I would do savitark. Pen, silver, clip, circle, right, shiny, kind of dull brushed aluminum. I'm thinking about what I'm observing. That's a valid form of meditation. So savitark is kind of saying, like, it's not, I don't know what the word, honestly, vitark means in Sanskrit. But when you say savitark, you're saying, like, I'm thinking about the form, right? And then if you're only thinking about that, then it's actually a stage of samadhi, right? If it's just, let's do something more fun. Burt's beeswax. All right, so Burt, yellow, red lettering, vitamin E and peppermint. And all I'm doing is being with Burt's beeswax, and all I'm doing is thinking about it. If there's nothing else happening, no thoughts of anything else, then that is savitark samadhi. And that's beautiful, because now you're not worrying about the past. You're not afraid of the future. You're not pissed off at somebody else. You're not thinking about how to get vengeance on your landlord, right? All the things humans do when you're just loving your Burt's beeswax, and you're only there with just that. That'd actually be really nice right now. When you're just there with what you're observing, you're in reality, right? It's as close as you could get to reality. In Course in Miracles, if I say, this is lip balm, this is really good lip balm, this is the peppermint and vitamin E one, this is a yellow, whatever, you get the point. I'm describing what is. That's called right perception in A Course in Miracles. It's far more sane, right? That's a very healthy way to be. Practice that way. Remember, we can practice samadhi all the time. You're walking down the street. What are you thinking about? I see the sidewalk. I see the cracks in the sidewalk. Don't step on one or you break your mother's back. I see the cars going down the street. I see the sky. I see the sun. Let your mind describe what you're seeing all the time. Because if you're going to think, your mind might as well narrate what's actually happening. I'm like screaming to everybody in the news right now. If you just describe what was happening and stop creating insanity, the world would be a very different place. You would be present to what is. So that's Savitark. And it is a form of samadhi if you're just there with it. Right? But now, I can't spend too much time on that. I hope everybody gets the point. You can think about what's happening, and that's a better use of your mind. But now, obviously, that's just the first stage of samadhi. But let's spend a little more time on it with, aside from pens and lip balms, think about meditating on the statue of Buddha. You're a Buddhist, you can meditate on the beautiful statue. You say, bronze, beautiful proportions, ears, they always have long earrings. You can see his head, he wears like kind of a cap, usually, a hat type of thing on the statue of Buddha. You can see his eyes, beautiful eyes, well proportioned, symmetrical. He has a beautiful smile on his face. He looks like he's peaceful and compassionate. I see his hands gently resting in his lap. That's how you would meditate on that statue, just describing it using your mind over and over. Okay, and then you could do it on a picture. You could also do Vitark with mantra. So if you're singing out loud, you would be just chanting the mantra out loud, and that's a physical form in a sense of the mantra. In Anahata meditation, you're breathing, you're counting, you're focused on your hara, you're moving energy through the grids, and you'd be thinking things like, I'm moving energy to my hara. Energy just went to my kidneys. Whoa, now it just went up through my heart. It went down to my shoulders. I'm jumping ahead. Now it just went, I just want to get down. That goes down to the sexual energy. Wow, now I'm breathing into my sexual energy. You're doing the meditation system. You're breathing, you're counting, and you're thinking about what you're doing. And you're not doing anything else. Right? When you're really good at that, and there's only that, consider that you have Savitark Samadhi. Check. All right, now, and again, we can keep talking about that, but I hope you get the point. Nirvitark Samadhi, observing form without thought. Because why does your mind need to narrate everything? Well, it really doesn't, because you're in there, you're conscious. You don't need to be walking down the street having your mind go, car, car, car. It's like, no, this car's passing, and you're aware of it. And eventually you can tell your mind, okay, stop narrating. I don't need you to do that anymore. Thank you, because that's all you do now. Right, like you're making love with your spouse. I'm trying not to be too descriptive of thoughts in my mind. But you would be like, if you couldn't be present to your partner, you'd be saying things like, I love this person. I like kissing this person. I like touching this person. I'm touching this person. I'm giving this person pleasure. Like if you couldn't just be with that person, that's tantric sexuality, right? You want to be fully present with your partner. But if you can't be, your mind needs to at least talk about your partner internally, describe what you're doing, describe what's happening to you. And then eventually you can be like, okay, shut up and just feel, just be, just have the experience. All right, just walk down the street and see what's happening. Look at the moon and you don't have to describe it. That's Nirvitark. So if you're looking at the moon, you're saying round, gray, silver. You can see like the aura, the halo kind of look around it, shining. It's reflecting the sun's light. It's moving up in the sky. It's not quite full. That would be Savitark. You're just thinking about what's in front of you. Nirvitark, you're just staring at the moon. And there's nobody home. And that's Dhyan. I observe moon. Nothing in between. No fiction in between the space of you and reality. And we're not denying there's a moon. We're just sitting there on the top, like if you think about the Buddhist ox herding pictures, the stage 7, ox forgotten, self alone. Then the little boy is sitting on the top of a mountain in his little hut looking at the moon, and he's just staring at the moon. Stage 7 in the ox herding pictures is deeper than this, but that's the idea. It's like there's just a you observing the object of consciousness. So when you're looking at the picture of Christ, you don't have to think about him, just sit there and be with him. All right, so we've talked about this already, but again, this is a thorough meditation course. So Vitark has two levels. Savitark, you're thinking about what you're observing. Nirvitark, you're not thinking. When you're doing Anahat level 1, hara, 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 but stop thinking hara. You don't even have to count your breaths at some point. You're just breathing into your hara. When you're at your heart, you're thinking love, love, or counting your breaths, or doing a mantra. Eventually, just be at your heart with love, and you don't have to keep thinking love, love, love. When you go to meditation 4, sexual energy, you're not thinking pleasure, pleasure, feel good, pleasure, pleasure. No, you're just breathing and it feels good. One of our current students, who's not always able to be here live, he emailed and he said, all it said was something like, it's delicious. And I wasn't really sure, honestly. I didn't want to guess what that meant. And I said, what's delicious? And the email came back, Anahat meditation is delicious. And that probably, meaning like the sexual energy component. And then obviously we have the bringing that up to spirit. You don't have to be thinking like, all my love and bliss and pleasure goes to God. You're just doing that. Just like making love with your partner. Stop thinking about it. Just do it. Okay, so anytime you're doing level 1 in Anahat, essentially just think you're on the Vitark level, whether you're counting your breaths or thinking the words that relate to those areas or using mantra. Again, I'm not telling you exactly what to do because I want this to be a lifelong practice and I want you to listen to your own inner guidance, but you want to understand level 1, focusing on the body, largely the body, Vitark. Okay, there might be questions, of course, but save them for the end. Vichar. Vichar, imagination or mental imagery. Let me get a drink. What usually happens with Vichar is we close our eyes and we turn the attention inwards. We still have to meditate on something. So when it's an image of Buddha, you close your eyes, you picture the image of Buddha, Christ, Krishna, whoever's in your mind, and then, excuse me, with Anahat, we go to level 2. We're focusing on the subtle geometries, the 3-dimensional geometries, and we're contemplating those. We're putting our attention upon those. We're trying to figure out what's going on in there. I didn't tell you exactly where every point of the star is. It's your job to contemplate it. Like when you breathe up, meditation 4, the energetic level of it, or like the sexual energy, like what is that on the etheric level, right? You're learning to be with it. So Vichar is moving into more of the etheric, astral, mental levels. We're taking the consciousness away from the physical, putting it on the much more subtle. The movement into Samadhi is the movement from the dense to the more subtle, from the gross to the subtle, whatever you want to call the physical, away from the physical to the more subtle levels. But the deeper level is just you realize it's all about imagination or mental imagery. All right, so if you're doing like, hypnosis, guided imagery kind of stuff, it's not necessarily at all Samadhi, which involves all this intense concentration. But if you have your client, if you're a hypnotherapist and your client is visualizing being on the beach, that's the Vichar level. But it's Vichar Samadhi when that's all the mind is doing with intense concentrated power. So you close your eyes, you picture the image of, I'm going to say Krishna because I like Krishna. Like if I picture the beautiful lotus feet of Krishna, I'm visualizing Krishna, Krishna's feet, right? And like I'm putting my attention on that. That's Vichar. Now, if I'm describing the beloved in my mind, right, what I'm seeing as I'm imagining that, right, the way, and it's actually a very, very sacred and personal, so I don't really want to do it. Let's do something else. If I was visualizing a candle flame, I could see the candle flame with my eyes open, that's Vitar. I close my eyes, I visualize a candle flame, that's Vichar. Now, I'm describing the candle flame. I see wax dripping. I'm visualizing in my mind. I see the candle moving. I see the orange and the white and the yellows and little red. I see the candle itself. It's white. It's a tapered candle. See the wax dripping down. It's in a little candlestick holder. Describing all that in my mind while visualizing it is Savitark, observing mental images with thought. Nirvitark, observing mental images without thought. All right, so now it's just me and the candle flame. not me as a body, obviously, but me as consciousness, observing the mental idea of a candle flame. But like, not really wanting to describe Radha Krishna, but like, that's really hard to want to verbalize. The idea is, that's trickier there. That's interesting. Okay, anyway, Nirvitar. So I'm with what I'm observing without having to think. Just me and what I'm observing. But if you can make it something that's so beautiful and so sacred, I think it feels blasphemous to try to explain what I know inside out loud when it comes to that. But you want to do that in your mind while you're practicing Nirvitark. Okay, so observe that internally, and there's no separation between you and what you're observing. Nirvitark. Now let's go to Anand. When you are moving into that for a moment. So to go there, I'm putting my attention, you can do this with me and close your eyes if you want. I'm putting my attention on the space of pure consciousness. That's me, that's the I am. If I'm visualizing, which is what got me there, Krishna or Christ or Buddha, I need to keep doing that. But let's do it through Anahat, right? Imagine all those geometry grids. I can see the grids. I think of the star tetrahedron shape. It's etheric, it's not physical. Remember, we've learned to transfer our consciousness to the etheric. To the subtle idea, just imagine the geometries. Hold your attention on those, but take the ascending triangle and trace it up to its apex, all the way to the top of the ascending triangle. 1 point. I am observing the idea of the very top of the ascending triangle, level 2, on the etheric plane. I'm focused on a mental idea at the top of a triangle. And if it helps, maybe imagine like the all-seeing eye of God, or the 4-letter name of God, the Tetragrammaton, if you know what that is. Like, just do your best to visualize what's at the top of the ascending triangle. How do you focus on God, on the highest? Again, if you're Christian, you'd probably be visualizing Christ, or if you want the feminine, maybe Mother Mary, or you see the statue of Buddha. For you, what's at the top of the ascending triangle? Maybe it's formless, maybe it's pure consciousness. Maybe you used a mantra to get here, so you would keep your mantra going. Let me give you a moment in silence. I'll do it with you as well. All right, so what happens when you move into Anand is we have asana, the body is still. We have pranayam, we're barely breathing. Attention is ascending up into spirit. Pratyahar, we withdraw the attention away from the external world. We're doing Narod Vritti. We're ascending, transcending our mind. We're way up in the space of pure consciousness. Again, you could hold a visual image if that helps you, or a mantra. But now we're doing dharana, concentrating in this space. Dhyan, subject, object, kind of merging into this space. But keep your practice going. And Anand Samadhi is the pure bliss of the self. So in Anand Samadhi, we're meditating on bliss. If you didn't know how important it is to do this, you just wouldn't get it. The meditation practice leads us to bliss. Put your consciousness on where you feel bliss. So what is bliss? Because the energy is so concentrated here, so focused, it becomes very bright. So you might experience light, but don't be attached to that. It's the most beautiful joy. It is pure love. And in Anand Samadhi, there's a me observing it, being with it. And in the devotional path, I'm loving it. I'm loving my source. I'm loving the beloved. It's pragyat, it's dualistic. There's a me observing in it. But I just keep focusing on it. There's no level 1 or level 2 anymore. There's no trying to leave your body. There's just meditating on bliss, putting your attention on bliss. It's very sweet. It's called Madhuram, meaning divine sweetness. And really, devotion, loving it, is the easiest way to go there. Anand Samadhi. The bliss of pure oneness, where I am observing bliss. There's no goal because it's just so good. You don't have anything else to accomplish. Just a little bit further in the Samadhi teachings. Okay, so if you're finding bliss in meditation, you put your attention on it. If not, you have to keep practicing. And there's nothing else. There's no mind. I am completely withdrawn in the road. All my attention is in the self. And there's no past or future. There's no thinking. There's no mind. There's just pure concentration on pure bliss. All the sanyam power is on bliss. And all the attention is going in and up. And let's start to go to explain, to stay with me as much as you can, Asmita Samadhi. Asmita means amness. I sense. I'm aware that I'm aware of pure bliss. I'm meditating now on Asmita, the self, the source of the bliss. Bliss has a source. Bliss is the source, yet the source, with Asmita, we're focusing on consciousness. So we're even transcending the idea of bliss, or not an idea, the experience of bliss. Asmita is just pure awareness, and I'm aware that I'm aware, and it's I, thou. It is still sampragyat, subject, object, but all that's left is I, observe, or love, thou, God. So I'm meditating on spirit. You might say you're the soul, meditating on the universal God, spirit. Soul meditates on spirit. Asmita, I, soul, my consciousness, me, meditates on the infinite consciousness, God. And it still helps to have devotion. I love that. So the purest is just to God, I love you. I value you. I trust you. I'm putting all my attention on you. But you don't use all those words. I'm just trying to entertain you. Just keep your attention on pure consciousness with no mind. So this is stage 7 of the ox herding pictures. And you've achieved stage 7 when you're essentially living this way most of the time. Ox forgotten, meaning the false self forgotten, self alone. It's just you and pure consciousness. The bliss is there, but it's different. It's more of peace. It's really just a peace that surpasses all understanding, with only the tiniest bit of duality left. Those are we're going to keep our eyes closed and just keep going. Excuse me. There it is. All right. Get the communication device working properly. From Asmita Samadhi, which is slightly dualistic, we go to the Asam Pragat states, which is non-dual, no subject, no object. The word nirvikalp means without imagination. In Asmita Samadhi, the only little bit of imagination left is I'm the devotee, I love God, or I'm the soul, knowing God. You're not thinking it though, you're just aware. I am the drop, and I'm one with the infinite ocean. But you're not thinking it. Just be aware that you're aware. Nirvikalp Samadhi is when we let go of the last drop of that sense of I. I don't have to think in any way or imagine. The word is imagine. There's no thinking in Asmita Samadhi. But there's the tiniest bit of imagination left, that I am a drop of the ocean. Again, not with words, not with English. It's the known distance. Asmita is I'm aware, and I'm that drop of awareness in an infinite ocean of awareness. Nirvikalp is when the drop just becomes the ocean. Paramahansa Yogananda wrote, I am becomes the sea of mirth itself. You completely lose yourself in the self. So this is Fana, complete annihilation. It's Shunya, it's empty. It's stage 8 of the ox herding pictures, the empty circle. Internally, it's pure silence. So there's no mind, not a single thought in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Nor is there imagination. It's completely empty. And there's no longer a false self. There's no ego in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Barely needing to breathe. There's no doer. There's no idea of time and space. This is the peace that surpasses all understanding because you're not doing anything. There's no fear. It's just perfect union in divine love. Now, there is one stage of Asampragyat beyond this. There are the other words, but essentially, there's only one more movement. The term is Kevalya Avastha, self alone. And the more you hold Nirvikalpa Samadhi, it won't be above in your higher chakras. It won't be transcendent. It becomes immanent, meaning, there are no words for this, but within everything. But there's no within everything. There's only God. Self alone means only God. Everything is God. So you can come back, in a sense, to your heart. The heart is anahat. Anahat means unstruck, not vibrating. The heart of the universe. And you're that, right here now. The source of all that is you, right here now. And the drop has become the ocean, but the ocean is above, below, left, right, in, out. There's none of that means anything anymore. No matter where you look, no matter where you go, no matter what you touch, it's all God. Which means, in just a moment, when you open your eyes, nothing changes. Remember, the eyes are just little flaps of skin. There is no inside and outside. God is everywhere and everything. God is all in all. God is the whole. There's nothing but God. So when you're ready, you'll let your eyes open and don't feel like you came out of anything. Now, we're still meditating. It's just eyes are open when you're ready. No mind, just sit here. It doesn't mean you're still. It doesn't mean you can't talk. Like, everything still is. There's still water bottle and microphone and body and voice and teaching. But it's all only God. So, Kevalya Avastha, if you want to look at the words on the screen. So, let's review the words on the screen. Again, there's no coming out of this. A non-samadhi is bliss and doesn't go away, but you find it and you meditate on bliss. And then that bliss permeates everything. It's not just up here. It's not just transcendent. It's everywhere. It's right here now. There's nothing else happening. There's just absolute bliss consciousness right now. There's nothing else happening. There's nothing else happening. I hope you guys really are getting that. There's nothing else happening but God right now. Asmita, amness. Who are you? You're that. The Hindus say, Tatvamasi, thou art that. You are Buddha. Why do you need to practice? Because you don't realize there's only Buddha nature. There's only oneness. There's only God right here now. There's only God's love right here now. There's nothing else happening. Asmita, you am that. Amness, you are that. Nirvikalpa, no body home, no false self, no imagination, no duality. But usually with Nirvikalpa, we're practicing it inside with the eyes closed, very deep, but eventually you're not up. Nirvikalpa becomes everywhere. So it's just God everywhere, but your eyes are closed. But then when you practice Kevalya Avastha more and more, self alone, your eyes can be open or closed. They're just flaps of skin. So meditate on that. Like when your eyes are closed, inside, outside. There's no inside, outside. There's universe. And eyes open and closed doesn't change a thing about it anymore. So that's the highest, actually. This is Shikantaza just sitting. But it doesn't mean you don't talk. It just means you're perfectly present. And the beauty is, and it's hard to grasp because you would think it's like something changed. So Shunro Suzuki, who wrote Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, oh no, it was one of the Suzuki. There's two major teacher named Suzuki. He was asked, what is enlightenment like? And he said, it's just like regular everyday consciousness, but only 2 inches off the ground. So they say, when you reach, how's it go? When the ordinary man attains in knowledge, how does it go? I'm giving this quite a while. When the ordinary man attains knowledge, he becomes a saint. But when the saint gains true understanding, he becomes an ordinary man. Or in the beginning of the path, trees are trees, mountains are mountains. When you ascend, mountains are not mountains, trees are not trees. But when you descend back again after that, trees are trees, mountains are mountains. And then you're just chopping wood, carrying water. You're no different than any other human being. Because again, on the outside, the ceramic pot is painted blue, it's still blue. But inside, it's been turned gold. Nobody can know what that is like. They can't even conceive of it. But when you're holding Kevaya Avastha right here now, you are anahat, you are unstruck, you are the pure source of all that is, one with all that is. There's just nothing else. There's only God and God's creations, and they're completely non-dual. In A Course in Miracles, it says everything else is your own nightmare and does not exist. Only the creations of light are real. So Kevaya Avastha, there's only light. In the Oxturning picture, stage 3 is the first glimpse of that, but then it goes away. So if you've had a all-pervasive light experience for however long, and then it goes away, that was a taste of reality. Kevaya Avastha is essentially that all the time. So it's a meditative state. To bring in a little personal self here, I don't claim to hold Kevaya Avastha all the time, but I know it. I get back into it more and more each day. And the more hours I spend in this place of just sitting, Shikantaza, just being right here, and it's just, you look around and you're like, you're in awe. And the mystical experience is you're sitting in your bedroom. Yeah, if you sit outside where there are no walls, you are a universe. There's nothing else. There's only universe, only God, only oneness. So essentially that's the goal. And then stage 10 of the Buddhist, so stage 9 is called returning to the source in the Oxturning pictures. And that's Kevaya Avastha. The more you hold that, you'll move into stage 10, entering the marketplace with helping hands. When you're in this state of non-dual oneness, and you're right here, you're just doing human, you're fully here, you'll see all the suffering. You'll be acutely aware of how much suffering there is. And you'll be moved to compassionate service. So there's no end to the path until all beings are free of suffering. And where all this leads is essentially the Bodhisattva now. While I'm still here with this body, which is a communication device, which could be of great service to those in need, this is God's plan for the teachers. If it weren't for the teachers of God, it'd be virtually hopeless to wake people up to who they are. So we need the enlightened beings who can be fully here, reminding everybody else who they are. So where do all the stages lead? You would think for your own personal enlightenment, but there is no person. Right, there is no individual self. But while there's all these beings, parts of your own self, all the other children of God who are lost and confused and suffering, then we're moved to compassionate service. So that to me is where the path ends, is realizing, wow, until everybody else is done, I'm not done, because there's no individual I separate from them. Right? If my foot is still caught in a trap, I can't get my head in bed. I can't lie down comfortably in bed while my foot's still in trap. While there's still all the people who don't have homes and who are suffering and dying and hurting each other, none of us are going to be at peace until that's resolved. I want to say, unfortunately, that is what it comes down to. So while you're still here, you only hold a few kinds of ego: the ego of the servant, the ego of the devotee, the ego of the child of God, or the beautiful Sufi phrase, the friends of the heart of the human race. The friends of the heart of the human race. That's what Samadhi leads us to. Not just blissing out on the top of the mountain, which I hope you get to do a lot in your life, but in any way you can, being of compassionate service. All right. That's it for that. So that's great. Wow, it's exactly 7 o'clock Pacific time. All right, let's go to Q&A. And there's one question there. So please ask questions. It's open up to sharing. If you need to go, I totally understand. Let me go back to full screen. We'll go back to that if we need it. All right. So yeah, question answer. Most of you are still here. Thank you. I'm like, I know I can do it. It's a meditation. I'm glad you're still doing it. Question, is that Savitark Vichar Samadhi? No, you want to use those terms that way. Do we use all three words, or Nirvitark Vichar Samadhi? Okay, let's go back and look. Yeah, thank you. You don't really have, let me pull the chat pod again, look at your words. All right, you said Savitark, which is the first part, the first type of Vitark. And then you said Vichar, which is having mental imagery Samadhi. No, just consider there's Vitark Samadhi and Vichar Samadhi, right? So consider Vitark, eyes are open, usually, doesn't have to be, but simply stated, because you're getting this eyes open and closed means nothing at some point. But as you're doing this in stages, eyes open, Vitark, I'm looking at something, and that really doesn't have anything to do with Vichar. You could get technical and say it does, but excuse me, give me a sec. Just consider it Vitark Samadhi, or you close your eyes, you meditate on an inner image. That's Vichar Samadhi. Then we have the Savitark Samadhi, where we're thinking about the external object, or the Nirvitark, excuse me, the voice is 3 hours talking, Nirvitark Samadhi, where we're not thinking about the external object. So don't mix the words. Then, let's look at your words again. Then you said Nirvitark Vichar Samadhi. It would just be Nirvitark Samadhi, or there's, oh, I see where your confusion's coming from. I made a mistake in the typing, not in the teaching. The teaching is accurate, the typing is wrong. Where it says Vichar on the screen, it says Savitark. Now I see why you're asking that question. It should say Savichar. I'll go and change that after class, but I'm not going to change this whole recording. So everybody, please pay attention on this one. Where it says Vichar, where it says Savitark, that should say Savichar. And then where it says Nirvitark, it should say under Vichar, Nirvichar. Okay, so yeah, that's why you're mixing the two. Just see Vitark is focused on the physical. See Vichar is focused on the more subtle mental. And then we have the Savichar, where I'm thinking about the internal object, or Nirvichar, where I'm not having to think about the internal objects. All right, thank you for asking that question, because yeah, that's a mistake in the screen. Again, it was taught properly, so trust what I say, but not what I wrote. Okay, so yeah, Vichar is Savichar and Nirvichar. Okay, which here, just so you can see it, we have up here. Savitark, Nirvitark, right? So Sampragyat, meaning dualistic stages of meditation. There's the Vitark, and then there's the Savitark and the Nirvitark. And then there's Vichar, Savichar, Nirvichar. Okay, great. Somebody said, can Asmita be achieved without Kundalini waking? Not, in my opinion, not in the highest. But remember, all of these are a practice, and you can always practice Asmita Samadhi. When you go to the Meditations on Higher Consciousness tab under Anahat Meditation, there's a Meditations on Higher Consciousness. Meditation 3 there called Sham Dhyan, where you meditate on the space of pure consciousness. You are doing that. Anyone can be taught to do that, right? If you're just teaching basic but really good deep meditation, teach what's called Sham Dhyan, or space meditation. Essentially, Asmita Samadhi is Anahat number 3. Or you can go to whatever the other level 2 is. But just think level 1, we ascend. When you ascend and put your attention on pure spirit, that is Asmita Samadhi. But you'll never really grasp it until not just Kundalini awakening, because Kundalini awakens, but then it has to purify the energy channels. Once the Kundalini makes it up to here fully, with really not a whole lot of block, there's always going to be some little block, whatever. But when it's super clear, super pure, then the Kundalini, Shakti, and so this is Shiv. Asmita is Shiv. It's the consciousness, and you're meditating on the consciousness. You can do that anytime you want, always. That's what my peace under all circumstances teachings are. Know that you're the observing consciousness. Asmita. I am the observing consciousness. You don't need Kundalini awakening to meditate on that. It's so important to understand that, or you'll think, oh, I'll never get there. A lot of the teachings in the West make it seem like Samadhi is really hard to achieve. And it is. But you can practice any of these stages. And Asmita is one of the best ones to practice, because you just meditate on pure consciousness. Use a simple mantra and focus on pure consciousness. So again, the Sham Dhyan meditation on the Anahat meditation website. Again, that's under Meditations on Higher Consciousness, or just go to YouTube and type in Matthew Brownstein, Sham Dhyan, SHYAM, DHYAN, and that's meditation 3 of that series, Meditations on Higher Consciousness. Yeah, you can just meditate on Asmita as a practice, but to really grasp what's going on, yes, you would need Kundalini awakening, you would need the chakras clear, and the Shakti needs to unite with Shiv. When that occurs and you put your attention there, it will be a different experience. But yeah, anybody who would tell you, no, you can't go directly there, is robbing you of a very valuable teaching, which is the direct path. Like, oh, only when a guru gives you Shakti Pat and you awakens your Kundalini can you meditate on Asmita Samadhi. No, you can start practicing Asmita Samadhi right now, but it'll be a practice, and it'll keep getting better and better and better over time. When you put your attention here, wherever you go, your energy is going to follow. Remember, where energy goes, where consciousness goes, energy follows. Where energy goes, blood follows. So the more you focus up here, you're kind of getting out of your body, and it's going to wig you out a bit. You know, to live up here a lot. And that's why we have the whole Anahat system, to be able to descend well. As you go here, the Shakti has to follow you. So it's going to find its way through the chakra system to get up to you. You'll naturally be awakening Kundalini by doing the Anahat system without anybody having to give you Shaktipat. And it's okay if you find someone who will do that to you. I've done that to people. I do know how to do that. And, you know, I don't want to sound egoic, it's just true. But like I said, a great teacher of mine, he said, you know, when people were throwing around, he was talking about another teacher, I may have told you the story and I won't go into the story now, but he said, when I was throwing around Shaktipat, people didn't grow anywhere near as well. When I stopped doing that, people grew so much better. So you don't have to go seek a guru to awaken your Shakti through Shaktipat, although if that happens in your life, great. Just keep doing the meditation system. It'll awaken on its own at the proper time. And the more attention you spend on ascending, or Asmita Samadhi, the Shakti will rise to meet you. And it naturally has to awaken by doing that. Great question, thank you. Could you please provide references for breath work? Sure, instituteofhypnotherapy.com. We teach it in a hypnotherapy school, and I would definitely encourage you to learn it. I don't know where this person is in my life as far as, are you a student in the school or graduate or anything? But that's, to me, the best way to learn it, because it's in the context of these teachings, whether our hypnotherapy students know it or not. Eventually, you know, they catch on to, oh, this is purifying all those blockages by doing breath work. So I would learn it, you know, through our school. I would instituteofhypnotherapy.com. I would experience it with one of our graduates who are trained as interpersonal hypnotherapists. As far as other ways to learn breath work, you can just Google rebirthing, Leonard Orr, who is the founder of rebirthing. He lived in India. He learned pranayama in India. And then essentially, he learned this one really simple technique. And then I think it was like in the 70s and doing this like hippie kind of movement. They're in this house and they're doing it in hot tubs. So that's called wet rebirthing. Where they're doing breath work in like warm, like kind of, I don't want to say body temperature, but warm water in a hot tub, breathing like that. So that's rebirthing, called wet rebirthing. And then dry rebirthing is just not in a bathtub or a hot tub. And essentially it's a super easy breathing technique, but you have to be careful with it because it's gonna quicken Kundalini awakening. It's gonna cause your blockages to just start regurgitating out of your subconscious mind. And if you don't have proper facilitation, you just shouldn't do it until you know you're ready. And I don't know the person who asked the question. I don't think we've met. So I don't just recommend anybody does breath work on their own. So do it with proper facilitations. You can find a rebirthing practitioner, but they're not trained in the hypnotherapy or the interpersonal hypnotherapy that we do. So they're not necessarily as qualified to clear the blocks as somebody who's studied my book, The Sutras on Healing and Enlightenment, and ideally somebody who is an unhot meditator, really. The other technique that I'm trained in is integrated breath work. So you can just Google that. Or holotropic breath work. Holotropic breath work is from Stanislav Grof. And that's like a 500-hour training. So I've studied it a bunch. I haven't gone through the full 500, but the breathing you can learn in 2 minutes. It's how to facilitate what comes up. But that training, instead of doing the holotropic breathwork training, we just have our students do 500 plus hours of hypnotherapy training. Okay, so our school is honestly the best way that I know of to learn how to do breath work in a way that's aligned with these teachings. You could read my book, The Sutras on Healing and Enlightenment. Chapter 9, I believe it is called The Breath. And it's a long chapter explaining how to use the breath to purify the sanskars. So I don't emphasize the Sutras on Healing and Enlightenment book too much in this training because it's about meditation. But if you want to understand the healing and enlightenment components, like we're talking about enlightenment now, but there's a whole path of being a healer, an enlightened healer, and understanding how to use the breath to purify people's blockages so you can awaken humanity. And again, to me, that's an interpersonal hypnotherapist who's done our clinical training and who's ideally studied the book, The Sutras on Healing and Enlightenment. All right, that's the best I can say about that for now. There might be better, but that's what I know of. And then, would you speak more to non-samadhi? You mean non-dual samadhi? Well, there's not non-samadhi. The question is, would you speak more to non-samadhi? Is that bliss stage? Okay, yeah. So let's look at this chart. When we start practice, vitark, we're focusing on something usually external. Or in Zen meditation, the eyes are open. We're not looking at anything. We're just focusing on our breath, breathing and counting, breathing and counting. And you do that for a few years. I'm just like, but you keep doing it and you keep working with your teacher on these basic levels, breathing and counting. That's like level 1 on a hot, breathing and counting. Then when you get to vichar, you don't necessarily close your eyes in Zen, although you can, and you don't necessarily focus on the higher chakras, although you can. I've had Zen teachers who have told me I could do that. But essentially, even with the eyes open, the attention is going inwards, and now you're focused more on the subtle ideas. Anyway, as you do vitark and vichar levels of practice, level 1, level 2 on a hot, eventually it starts getting really blissful. All right, so you're like, whoa, it's like, wow, that's really nice. And it's not necessarily in your body, although you feel in your body. Quite often you feel the bliss of your soul. The point is, wherever you feel bliss, but ideally higher, higher, higher in your higher chakras, you feel the bliss and you focus on it. It becomes the object of consciousness. But what happens usually is beginners start feeling kind of blissful. You're like, well, that's really nice. Then you forget about your practice and you kind of fall asleep. That's called yoga nidra or yogic sleep. It's like hypnosis or the end of a yoga class or a nice massage or a good acupuncture treatment. You'll move into this very blissful state, right? So if you had a good acupuncture treatment, it can do that. It'll open your energy meridians. So you're like, oh, I feel really good. But you don't know how to meditate on the bliss just because you had an acupuncture session or a nice hypnosis session. You don't want to fall into yoga nidra, yogic sleep. You keep engaging your practice. So let's just say you're breathing and counting, but you're focused up here. All right, breathing and counting, focus on the higher self, on the higher consciousness. And then you're like, well, this feels really good. And keep doing your practice. Keep breathing and counting. Well, this feels really good. Well, this feels really, really good. Then the thing that feels really good, the place that feels really good, that's a non-samadhi. That's what you put your attention on. So you're meditating literally on bliss, on pure inner pleasure, but not lower sexual pleasure. That'll be, I think we'll get to that next week. That'd be interesting. That'd be interesting. I'm just trying, it doesn't matter. During this week, I watch how the energy moves in me of what I teach you. So probably next week, we'll start touching upon the advanced sexual energy teachings. But don't confuse the pleasure of sex to the bliss of samadhi. But now imagine when they integrate. Now I'm excited. Yeah. So when the bliss of samadhi integrates with the pleasure of sex, wow, yeah, that's about as good as it gets. Because we have samadhi, which is awesome, but then when you learn how to make your whole body filled with pure sexual pleasure, really, really good. Okay, but don't confuse that right now. We're ascended. We're in the pure space of consciousness. We're engaging a spiritual practice, whatever it is, counting, mantra, visualizing, Krishna, whatever you do. But don't let go of the practice. So like when I meditate, which again, it's hard to talk about, Radha Krishna, like as a gopi, you can study this if you want. As a gopi, meditating on Radha Krishna, I feel the most sublime bliss. And it's my beloved, and I'm right there with the beloved. And it's so good, but I don't stop the practice that got me there. That's so important to understand a non-samadhi. You keep doing what you were doing, but then the bliss is getting stronger and stronger. The sweetness is getting stronger. And now you're putting your attention on the sweetness. So I'm not meditating on an object or an image. Like there's still the image in my mind right now of Radha Krishna, but I'm putting my attention on the light and the bliss that's glowing and growing here. And that leads me higher. So you stay in the bliss of the beloved, of God. And again, whatever your Ishwar Pranidhan, whatever your, the Ishteta, the chosen ideal for you. So as the bliss gets stronger and stronger, and you keep going higher and higher, focusing on the bliss, you're still asking, in a sense, what is the source of the bliss? Where's all this sweet light and beauty coming from? And then the higher asmita, beyond just doing your best to meditate on consciousness, you become aware of absolute bliss consciousness, where you as the drop are focused on the infinite consciousness. And there's just a subtle I, thou. So I, thou is sampragat, subject, object. I observe God. I mean, that's asmita, not quite as a practice, but when you attain that samadhi, you are observing your source, like your creator, that which manifested you. You are in the presence of, in asmita. And that's really what's happening. It's not just I focus on my forehead. I followed my beloved, like the visualization of how I can visualize God with form. There's lots of ways to do it, right? But visualizing God with form, experiencing the pure bliss, going higher than the bliss into pure consciousness, knowing myself as the soul, one with my source. Those are all sampragat stages, because they're still lover, beloved, or child and parent, if you will. Like a lot of my meditations are just like, ama, 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 the feminine, God is mother, ma, ma, ma. And then there's God is father, Abba, or that's a different name. It's not necessarily Pa, like there's Ma for mother. But like I'm being with Father, Mother, God, Radha, Krishna. Again, it's masculine, feminine. Radha is feminine, Krishna is masculine, but it's really just like it's Radha, Krishna, it's one. But whatever, you can go through Christ into that. It's all good. Um, but yeah, asmita, when the Shakti made it up to here, it's light and love and bliss, and you as a soul are one with God. And you're not a body. You as soul are one with God. But then, as it becomes more asam pragyat, moving into nirvikalp, vikalp is with imagination. And the last little imagination is like, I'm a lover, I'm a devotee, I'm the soul, one with my source. You're not just thinking it, you're being it. And then you're experiencing it. It's not like I don't believe in God. You experience God. And then nirvikalp, there's no need for practice anymore. You have to practice nirvikalpa. Once you got it, it's just tag. You're it. Like you're it. And it's non-dual. It's just only God. There's no other way to say it. You can't describe what nirvikalpa samadhi is with words. You can really only say what is not, and that's just a waste of time because it's not everything. In A Course in Miracles, it says, if you want to know what the peace of God is like, nothing in your past has ever been like what the peace of God is, because God is ever new joy. So nirvikalpa samadhi is just the presence of God right here now with no, there's nothing that's not that. Everything is that. Like every atom is vibrating as that. Not in that, but as that. Right? There's one energy, it vibrates and manifests into form. But it's not like there's form in God. E equals mc squared. They figured it out. Einstein figured it out. They know now. There's only one energy. But you can't do that in theoretical physics. You can figure it out mathematically, and you can do it through experimental physics that, there's one energy. But they can't feel it. And poor scientists. The mystics are the science of the soul. We know there's one energy, but we're drunk on it. Where the scientists can say, oh yeah, equals mc squared. You are equals mc squared. I am equals mc squared. I am energy. I am light. Matter is an illusion. So nirvikalpa is when there's really only that. And then Kevalya Avastha, the way I understand that distinction, like I feel like I experienced the states, but it's like you could debate what the words mean. Nirvikalpa is this inner absorption where there's only God, and I often see that as the empty circle. There's no one home, just empty. But then that empty over time merges with what's here. So if you go back and study the ox herding pictures over time, and you see the sacred geometry of it, we go ascending up to spirits, and the very top of the mountain is stage 8, the empty circle. Stage 9, we descend again. The descent is Kevalya Avastha, when it's complete. And that's when you're sitting right here, and it's the same experience as God beyond the beyond. Your out-of-body experiences that eventually go to God beyond the beyond. So nirvikalpa samadhi, out of the body, is God beyond the beyond. But that's not only up there. That's everywhere. The presence of God is everywhere, and the light of God is everywhere. Kevalya Avastha is when you're living in it. And that's why I told you when we're doing all that out-of-body stuff, I don't feel the need to do out-of-body anymore. Because where would you go when God is everywhere? And then the deeper realization when people are still suffering, you're not trying to escape the physical plane anymore. You've done that. Like for me, honestly, I don't want to say this humbly, but I've been there, done that with all the out-of-body stuff. I teach you about cosmic consciousness because I've done it. I've done God beyond the beyond ascension. You don't have to keep doing it because it's here now. Like this is cosmic consciousness floating around the universe. You are cosmically conscious in Kevalya Avastha. I'm aware that there's planets and mountains and suns and galaxies right now. Like the universe is happening right now. Okay, so I hope that helps. More about the bliss stage, but yeah, like how to focus on mostly about bliss. But the intention today was to teach the deeper stages of samadhi, beyond Anand, just so we spend more time on them. Again, we're talking 10, 20 years of practicing this to really start to experience some of this stuff. Okay, thank you. Someone said, so if you don't have image of Buddha, Jesus, etc., we can just focus on bliss or light. Yeah, it's just hard to find in the beginning. So if you're doing an anahat meditation, the focus is really breathing, counting, and the geometries. And then when we get to level 2, we're focusing, we close our eyes and we're focusing on the subtle geometries. And that's moving us to the vichar level. So vitark, eyes are usually, open, we're focused on form. Vichar, the eyes are closed, we're focusing on these subtle forms, right, the geometries. And then as you keep doing that, bliss will arise, especially as you keep ascending. You'll find bliss. So the anahat system, going through levels 1 and 2, will, remember, level 1 is vitark, level 2 is vichar. Anand will arise naturally. But now that you know it's there, you start looking for it. Like you're doing ascending, you're holding your attention up these pyramids, right, up the triangles or up the tetrahedron. And as you keep going there, you'll find bliss. You don't have to see an image of Christ or Buddha. There are, or Krishna. There are the the formless paths where you don't meditate on God with form, right? You wouldn't in Islam or Judaism, you wouldn't meditate on Christ or Muhammad or Buddha. It would be considered blasphemous, actually. And the reason is like, oh, it's a sin, you're going to hell, at least not here. It's just not necessarily the highest recommended way to practice. But in Hinduism, they're like, yeah, focus on the gods, of course, because human beings are very conditioned to form. And so we need form to meditate on God. So meditating on God with form, Christ, Krishna, Buddha, Lakshmi, Durga, Kali, you can meditate on any of them. And I do. I love Kali. I love Durga. I meditate on these forms. I love them. And again, love. Love is the key. But I know how to let go of the form to move into the formless. It's pretty hard for a beginner. I'm not saying you're a beginner, the person asks the question. I'm not judging anybody here, but it's very hard for a beginner to meditate on the formless absolute. You can't even conceive of it, and you're still conceiving of things. God is beyond conception. You can't use your mind to grasp what God is. So you can get an idea of God, picture of Christ. Right? It's good. Christians make progress with that, right? You know, and the Christian mystics really make progress with that because they're learning to fall in love with Christ, to be a lover of Christ. And then by focusing on that image of Christ and as a lover, eventually the way to God is through the Son, right? So like that's a perfectly valid path. But we want to find what works for us. It's not like you must be Christian, you must be Hare Krishna. Like, no, you must be you, right? You must follow your heart. So if you can do it on the formless, awesome. And so when the people who are more into formless would benefit from studying Advaita Vedanta or Advaita Vedanta. That's A-D-V-A-I-T-A, Advaita, and then Vedanta or Vedanta, V-E-D-A-N-T-A. Advaita Vedanta is the non-dual philosophy of India from Shankaracharya. And it's all about Nirvikalpa Samadhi. It's about only God is real. There's only God. There's nothing else. Everything else is an illusion. It doesn't exist. There's only God. And it's a formless path. You meditate on God as the formless. And yes, if you're meditating up here only on formless pure consciousness and you're finding bliss there, you're on the right track. As long as you're finding peace and bliss and joy. But the thing about Advaita Vedanta, it's non-dualistic, so they don't encourage the lover-beloved relationship. The devotional paths of bhakti, and Christianity is a bhakti path, that focuses on that. In Sufism, you have the Mavlevi order, the whirling dervishes, and as they're spinning around and dancing, inspired by Rumi, and doing music and song and maybe drugs. I'm sure some people have done that, drugged out. They're feeling this incredible bliss spinning around. That form of dance and movement, you find the bliss, and then you can go through the stages. Remember, every spiritual path will go through the stages we've been talking about, the ox herding stages and the Samadhi stages. It's just a question of what floats your boat. But again, anahat meditation by itself will get you there. It's just that we have these geometries and all the value of sacred geometry. But you might find that for you, for anybody here, You're longing for something else. You already have something else. Like those of you who are shaman, you might find you're integrating Anahat and shamanism beautifully. I can't speak to that. It's not a path I've gone deep into. But any path will blend with the Anahat meditation system. It's just understanding the nature of these grids. Somebody raised their hand. Please just use the chat pod. Let me know how I can help you. I don't know what the hand raising I can do about that, but definitely type and we'll talk. Or if you want a microphone, let me know, but maybe not till we're done recording. So yeah, it's a great question. So if you don't have an image of Buddha, Jesus, etc., can we just focus on bliss and light? If you can find bliss and light. But if you can't, meditate on consciousness. Just keep finding consciousness. Narrow the field of your attention. Practice and understand the road. Withdrawing into the self, putting the Sanyam power on the self, like right in there in your head. And the more your concentration merges into consciousness, it'll get brighter and brighter and brighter, and then there'll be bliss and light. But in the beginning, there won't be. And then it's hard to meditate on something you can't even see. But if you're able to have inner vision, your third eye is opening and all the attention is there and the kundalini is rising up and it's bliss and light. Yeah, of course you can meditate on that. But it's important to understand, because I'm training you guys to be teachers as well, for those of you who want to, you can't ask a beginner to meditate on bliss and light. They don't see it at all. Just remember the woman with the hammer in the gas station attacking people. No clue, right? Most human beings have no clue. And even people who are meditating a while still haven't found bliss and light in that higher space. So yeah, we have stages to move people through, and that's why understanding the stages of Samadhi is really important. Thank you, awesome. Meditate all the time. Can you explain it more from practical perspective? Yeah, beautiful, thank you. In Zen, Zen has really nailed this. We don't practice meditation in Zen. We have Zazen, sitting Zen. We have Oryoki, eating Zen. Kinhin, walking Zen. Chopping wood, carrying water Zen. In the monastery one day, they put altars on all the toilets. It was so cool. It was like peeing Zen, defecating Zen, cleaning the toilet Zen. Right? When I'm pissed because I wanted to clean the toilets, that became my spiritual practice. Right? Cleaning the dishes Zen, every moment Zen. So Zen practice is really probably the pinnacle of understanding every moment is meditation. So mindfulness is really a good word to help us to understand that. Every moment you are just present. And so you use every moment to come back to the moment, and you realize when you're not in the moment. Meditation on the cushion is practice. This is one of the best teachings. I'm glad you asked the question, because I hear a teacher in my mind. Some names I don't give you, but I give credit that, obviously I learned this stuff from people. A teacher of mine, I remember saying, like, what is meditation practice for? It's practice for life. Life is the goal, right? Like, you're alive, you're here, you're alive. It's like, what else can you say? You're alive. It's like, you should just be like, wow, all the time, like, wow, you're just in awe that you're even here having this experience. But you're not, like I said, Bill Murray in this interview, check it out, it's really cool, and he's getting older, it's interesting to see. He's like, I just want to be alive, I just want to be present, I just want to have like some moments where I'm just here. So that's what meditation is. We take it off the cushion, and you're going to get upset. People are going to piss you off. You're going to be in traffic. People drive too slow. People carry hammers in gas stations. Like, there's really a funky world out there. It's going to push your buttons. Meditation is actually practice for that. Right? How to grow, how to keep your heart open, how to purify your blockages, all those opening the heart teachings, which I haven't even spent a lot of time on in Anahat, but you can find them in all my works one way or another. All the opening the heart stuff I teach is about how to purify your emotional blocks. While you're living your life, observing, life pushing your buttons, you're conscious. Like, you want to be in there observing all the time. You're always conscious. It's not just about being mindful to chop your vegetables well and to prepare meals well and be present for your lover well. Meditation is about observing what's going on inside of you and not being caught up in your stuff, right? So every moment, it's like, oh, there's anger. It's okay, it's just, oh, there's anger. And then you let it go and it clears. Oh, look at that, it's sad. Like, I watched what's happening in India before I went for my hike today. I was sad. There's like, how many is it? It's like I don't know, a guy, America's at 200,000. 100,000 people in India have died from coronavirus. It's sad. Okay, like it's gut-wrenchingly sad. The doctors have to deal with that every day. Sad. Okay, so, but then I'm like, well, I'm not going to hold on to that all the time, but while I'm seeing it, yeah, it's sad. Then I went for a walk in the woods. I let that go within a couple of minutes, but I am observing my energy and letting the Shakti clear my energy all the time. It's okay to have emotions. They should move through you, right? But only meditators are able to pull back and to watch what's happening at every moment. You're just aware of process. You're not messing with process. You're observing process. So yeah, you practice on the cushion, but then every moment Zen. Um, Zen Mind, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind is a good book on that. Not having others, but there's definitely other books that I think there's just a whole lot of teachings that I'm working to convey. My opening the heart stuff, if you ever have access to that as a student or a school, or just Google Matthew Brownstein opening the heart, there's a $20 product. You download it, it gives you, and then my Peace Under All Circumstances teachings. It's all about taking it off the cushion. Like, how do you be at peace? Peace under all circumstances at every single moment. It's only because you as the self are peace. I, the pure consciousness, am peace. The body's not always at peace. The emotions or sensations aren't always at peace. The mind's not always at peace. But I'm always at peace. The observer. So are you. But if you don't know how to pull back to be the observer, you can't be at peace no matter what's happening. I watch my human get sad seeing all the people in India suffering. But I pull back and those are the guys who taught me this stuff, right? I think that's part of why it's sad, because like, oh, it's, they're so beautiful and they teach this stuff. So you pull back and you watch, and your blockages will start clearing very fast because you got out of the way. So yeah, to deepen the off the cushion meditation stuff, I would definitely encourage you guys to study my Peace Under All Circumstances materials. Meditations on higher consciousness will allude to that more and more. Yeah, anything about Zen, about getting it off the cushion. All right, great. I'm sure I could go on, but thank you. That's awesome. Seems like Ananda and Asmita are very close. I think good. They're close but no cigar. It's important to understand the bliss that arises in Anand is not considered the purest self. The bliss is like a trickling out. It's kind of a good way to say it, because when you go up really, really, really high, I didn't mention it during this, but I had the thought that I could have. You start stimulating the glands, the pineal and pituitary gland, when you're going in, up. Eventually, the bliss starts to develop, and physiologically, something happens. The yogis call it amrita. It's so delicious. Delicious. The yogis call it amrita. It's a secret gland. It was secret because they didn't do brain dissections 5,000 years ago. Now it's probably the pituitary, I think. Doesn't really matter because, again, the yogis didn't know, but they called it a secret gland. When you go really, 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 really high and in, and the concentration merges, then there's bliss, but then that gland submits amrita, which is this nectar, and that pours down your throat. So physiologically, something happens internally. Like you got kundalini going up, but then you got amrita dripping down. It's delicious. You'll taste it. It's like literally a taste in the back of your throat. There's like leaking down from your brain. I don't know. I don't know how much science is on that, but you can feel it. So there's bliss that occurs, and that's awesome. But then you keep focusing. You keep doing your meditation. Whatever you did to get there, you keep doing that. And then eventually, like, you might say higher than the bliss. Yeah, that's you can say it that way. Again, there's stages. So you can talk that way in stages. Higher than the bliss is the pure consciousness that the bliss emanates from. So when you go into asmita, yeah, the bliss is there, but I'm above the bliss. You are transcendent to the bliss. So no, you shouldn't consider them the same, like close but no cigar. Just consider there's Vitark form, Vichar imagery, Anand bliss, Asmita pure consciousness. But as the soul. Like, Asmita is I'm aware that I'm the soul. and I'm aware of God as the universal soul. Asmita drops away, you might say even higher, into nirvikalp when the bubble pops and you become, or you realize you are the sea. So yeah, don't consider them the same. Meditate on the distinction between I did a practice that got me to bliss. I'm feeling all this bliss and it's so delicious. And now I'm going to go beyond the bliss into pure consciousness itself. It's more, asmita is more satisfying, I think I can say for two reasons. There's less you. I love the meditation, the prayer, of God, less of me, more of thee, less of me, more of thee, less of me, more of thee. The more there is of thee, the less of me, the more blissful it gets, the more beautiful it gets. But then in asmita, as the false self is dropping away, there's less effort required at some point. There's more profound peace. It's like effortless. It's just reality is being reality. And yeah, and all the lower levels take care of themselves, bathed in the bliss of God, but you are even above that. So yeah, meditate on the distinction between the two. I know we're doing like this one class, and I know it's pushing 4 hours, but you could spend years every day studying this stuff. You think, oh, meditation is simple, but not once you start understanding this stuff. So yeah, meditate on the difference. There's a reason why the yogis are here, Patanjali and the Yoga Sutras made these distinctions. So yeah, it's worth studying and meditating on. Definitely study, all this stuff comes from the Yoga Sutras. And the best version of, and this, trust me, religious scholar, the best version of the Yoga Sutras I found is called Patanjali Yoga Darshan. Patanjali Yoga, it's one word, Patanjali, Patanjali, Yoga, Y-O-G, Darshan, D-A-R-S-H-A-N, that means the vision of oneness, by Swami Sham, S-H-Y-A-M, Swami Sham. By far, that's the best version of this. 4 chapters, super easy, but you could spend a lifetime studying that text. Okay, someone said longer meditations, for example, a whole day. Can you please explain? Do you sit on the cushion the whole day nonstop? No, we could talk about more in depth sometime. It's a nice, hold on a second, I'll make 2 notes. One is fix the char. We had that issue in the training manual. And the other is a retreat. I would like to eventually, after COVID and once these teachings are all there, we'll schedule some kind of on a hot retreat somewhere. And those who want, we'll get together and we'll do it. We wouldn't just sit on a cushion all day. It's physically impossible, really. So if you want to do a meditation retreat on your own, that takes a lot of training. I'll just give you some pointers now. You sit for about a half hour each time you sit. In between the sittings, you do something. So do work practice. Remember in Zen, we don't meditate. We have sitting practice, work practice, body practice. Body practice is like you're doing Hatha yoga or Tai Chi. Work practice, you're cleaning your house. But that's the practice of taking the meditation off the cushion. Kinhin, you can study Q-I-N-H-I-N or K-I-N-H-I-N, Kinhin, walking meditation. So you sit, you walk. So you'll sit for 25, 30 minutes. It depends where you're at. The monastery, we would sit for sometimes like an hour, which is hard. And then we'd walk for like 5 or 10 minutes. And then sit, and then walk. So sit for a half hour, walk for 5 minutes, sit for a half hour, walk for 5. But learn how to do walking meditation. Don't just walk around aimlessly. And then you do what's called oryoki, sitting, eating meditation. It's a formal style of Zen sitting. I've done this. We had Anahat Meditation Center in Massachusetts, and we did retreats, and we would do oryoki. We would actually sit there with the 3 bowls and chopsticks and mindfully eat. Right? So but you're doing that on the cushion, so that's hard on your legs. Yeah, so I would schedule something, like I'll show you guys how to make a schedule, because I just made a note to do that. Like something like, I'm not an early riser, so 6 in the morning, most times like 4:30 in a monastery, it's painful. But and I'm getting older, so I'm not as gung-ho about that kind of stuff anymore. So if we do a retreat together, we'll start at like 10 in the morning. You start early, like 6 o'clock, before sunrise, and do like 3 sittings, 25 minutes, walk 5, 25 minutes, walk 5, 25 minutes. And that'll give you a good hour and a half of practice, and then have breakfast. And then you don't go back on the cushion right after breakfast. You usually do some work practice. So take an hour and go clean the toilets. Yeah, like do some like real manual labor kind of stuff. Clean your house, but do it very mindfully. Don't talk, no music, just clean the toilet. Like very focused, very present. And then by about 10 o'clock in the morning, you can have a little rest time if you need it. And then 10 o'clock back on the cushion, 3 half-hour sittings with walking in between. If you don't walk in between, like when I meditate at night, which I'll most likely do tonight, I sit as long as I possibly can. Sometimes that's like an hour or two. And then when my legs are like, all right, I'm like, shit, we better check in on the body. And it's like, all right, I gotta lie down. So I'll lie down in corpse pose, Shavasana, and just lie there for however long. And then I'll get back up and sit again. So I'll do lying down and sitting. When I go in a tent and just go retreat by myself, you can't just sit in the tent for 12 plus hours. So I sit. When I can no longer sit, I'll lie down. Sit, lie down, sit, lie down. Just, on your back, palms up, corpse pose or Shavasana. And then, when you go for a walk, like when the Anahat meditation system came to me, I was doing 12 hours a day in my tent. But I would sit. When I couldn't sit, I'd lie down. And that's when the out-of-body stuff starts occurring, when you do the lying down part of the practice. So sit, lie down, go for walks, get some exercise. When I lived in the tent, when the Anahat stuff came to me, I wasn't enough to do anything. I was like only just meditating all day. But I would go for walks. Reading, you could read. You could take like an hour and do spiritual practice. Like if you're in Anahat, study my books or whatever else you're reading, Yoga Sutras. So yeah, in the Zen monastery, I lived at a Zen Mountain Monastery. One of their books, John Dido Laurie is the abbot's name. He passed away. He was a cigarette smoker. Anyway, that's not relevant, but John, he's a great being. So John Dido Laurie was the abbot of the monastery, and he wrote a book called The 8 Gates of Zen. And the 8 gates are essentially the other things you do besides sitting. So there's sitting Zen, which is one of the 8 gates. But then there's work practice, walking meditation practice, eating practice, liturgy practice, studying scripture practice. So you learn about, so the term, like when I say I spend 12 hours a day meditating, really what I mean is I spend 12 hours a day, or however long it is, doing sadhana. Sadhana is spiritual practice, right? So quite often I'll start my evening spiritual practice doing yoga. So I'll lie down on the ground, get really centered, and then I'll do like an hour of body practice, yoga, gentle yoga at night. Nothing too intense because too much energy, I won't sleep. So gentle restorative yoga at night. And then after I get my body all loose and the meridians open, then I'll sit for like an hour. Then I'll lie down and let the body recover from sitting. And then I might sit for another hour. So it's like 3+ hours of spiritual practice, but not 3 hours of sitting still, which is just way too hard, if not impossible. It's a really nice romantic idea of the monk sitting in the mountaintop, not moving. But I live that way, and you just can't sit still all the time. So I go for a walk in the woods, and then I sit in one, like today, I went for a walk in the woods. I sat at one beautiful spot, chanted to Krishna, and then kept walking, get some exercise, sat in another spot, chanted to Radha Krishna, but doing my meditation, and then come home and then I meditated for like an hour or so before I started teaching you guys. So it's your life becomes meditation. Your life becomes spiritual practice. It's not like you should live a spiritual life separate from your other life. Life is spiritual practice, right? Life is capital L, God, right? Life is what's sacred. So it's a really good question. Thank you. Yeah, it's nonstop, meaning every moment you are doing spiritual practice. Walking Zen, sitting Zen, eating Zen, crying Zen, making love Zen. It's all Zen, right? They don't meditate formally because they're meditating all the time. Great question. Thank you. If you keep meditating God, do you naturally move through all the levels? Yes. Or at least through Nirvikalpa level. Yes, totally. It just depends on what you mean by God. The idea is seek the highest. And if you mean like God the highest, then yeah, anybody who meditates on God in any tradition will go through all these stages, but they will use different words. Like in Sufism, you hear fana, annihilation. In Buddhism, you hear shunya. In yogic practice, what's the best word for annihilation of self? Moksha, liberation is a word. So they have words in all the different traditions, right? In Christian mysticism, it's called unio mystica. If you keep meditating God in Christian mysticism, yeah, you will go into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, You just won't call it that. Study like the lives of St. John of the Cross, St. Teresa of Avila, these great Meister Eckhart. Here's a quote from the Christian mystic Meister Eckhart. He said, the same eye, so think about the third eye region, the consciousness, the soul, the same eye that I see God with is the same eye that God sees me with. That's written by somebody in Asmita Samadhi. Meister Eckhart in Unio Mystica, Christian mystic, experiencing Asmita Samadhi, said, the same eye that I see God with is the same eye that God sees me with. That's Asmita Samadhi. When Christ said, I and my Father are one, that is a statement of Asmita, or Christ. So, never called Samadhi. Yeah, they got there. So if you just keep focusing on God in your own unique way, you'll get there. But again, I think it depends on what you mean by God. But yeah, if you're focusing on the highest, you'll get everything along the way. But I just love Sanskrit because it gives the Yoga Sutras that give, all of the Hindu scriptures, they give us a map of the terrain that it's just like, the chakra system, Kundalini, learning this idea of Narod. I've never heard in any tradition it mapped out so well and so beautifully. I'm giving you like the most refined teachings I know, and then hopefully helping you to apply them to any tradition. Great, thank you. Would you recommend combining practicing the Anahat system together and Course in Miracles practices, or is it better to practice it separately? I'm a huge fan of Course in Miracles. I do practice it in one way or another every day. I've been listening to it a lot on audio. It's for free on YouTube. The other day something was bothering me and I'm like, I don't do that. Okay, that was upsetting, but I don't need to hold on to that. So I meditate, I turn on Course in Miracles. I'm going to listen to that instead of my own, ego thoughts. And yeah, that purified really quickly. So I have that in my life all the time. To me, A Course in Miracles is one of the highest, most refined, perfected ways of teaching. There's no ego. It's a totally different path in a sense, but to me, it's really crucial. Any chance I get to introduce someone to it. Yeah, you could do it I've combined the two, no problem at all. If you do Course in Miracles lessons, 365 lessons, one per day, start at the beginning of the year if you're really serious about it. Yeah, you can do one lesson a day. It would not conflict at all with doing Anahat. I recommend it. I recommend listening or reading the book frequently, doing the workbook for sure. If you've never done it, you should, I don't want to say should. It tells you to listen to inner guidance. But when you feel inspired, start the workbook lessons. And the manual for teachers is priceless, and the two supplements that go with it, priceless for being a spiritual teacher or a facilitator, like hypnotherapist or whatever you do. Yeah, I wouldn't do it separately only because to me, both teachings are so valuable, Anahat and Course in Miracles. I couldn't wait. I couldn't say, yeah, do Anahat for 2 years and then put off Course in Miracles, or put off Course in Miracles and do Anahat. I would recommend doing both, actually. If you resonate. Course in Miracles is a Christian theology on the surface, and it's written with masculine pronouns. If you can get over that, and how thick the text is, and just start to get the essence of it. Like the other night, I listened to it for like a half hour, and I'm like, well, okay, that's enough. Like that's intense. That's like huge spiritual downloads, but it's priceless. And like to me, the teachings do come from Christ. When you get it eventually down the line, who's giving A Course in Miracles? It is Jesus. Like, I don't know, there's no other way to say it really. It's like with the Holy Spirit, but it's that voice. And to me, that's so beautiful because it just makes me feel very at peace with Christianity. Right? I'm like, yeah, I have a great relationship with Christ. I love Jesus. I listen to him all the time. Like to me, that's awesome. And I'm also Hare Krishna. Right? And I'm also a non-dualist Advaita Vedanta practitioner. So yeah, I'm not for mixing a whole bunch of things, but I'm for finding the stuff that you love and not letting it go if it really works for you. Okay, so just answer my question. Awesome. Thank you. Good night. Catch up tomorrow. Okay, no problem on the hand raising. Yes, there is much crossover shamanism. Yeah, I just haven't studied it, but it's so beautiful, everything I've seen for sure. Great, a thank you, another thank you. Good night, all in sweet meditations. Thank you. I love the sound of a group retreat. Thank you for such a wonderful evening. I'm going to meditation practice. Awesome. Yeah, me too. I think we're done. 4 hours. All right, we're good. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop screen share just so we can see who's left in the chat pod. Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody who made it this far. Let me stop recording. I wish everybody a wonderful evening. We'll be here next week. I suspect we'll go in, well, let's just see what happens. But we'll be here next week for sure. All right. So good night. Thank you all.